Rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is one battle. Okay, we're short a couple of board members, just so everyone knows that Jane is working on the play and she'll be in and out as needed. So I'll maintain a quorum here. You can't go anywhere. Okay, agenda changes. Executive session will be at the hopefully at the end. Removing 5C from tonight's presentation.
Is this the same presentation we were sent? Which?
Yes.
The
Yes,
posted
this is the
presentation?
electronic one as well.
Okay, first off, we have some presentations on the CNS company's introduction.
Yes, if I could, after a very thorough actually, application screening process, I'd like to recommend to the board that we hire CNS as our construction manager for the upcoming capital project. We had two board members, Peter and Gary, were in on the interview process and know the thoroughness and the deliberations that went into it. And we have Shabelle Jabaji and Mike DePerna this evening, just so the board can start putting faces with names, and I'd like them to at least speak so you hear their voices, and then we'll take it from there. So, go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Shabelle Jabaji. I'm a vice president for the CNS companies. And I understand we will be your construction managers of your upcoming capital improvement project. And thank you for your trust in us. And we look forward to partnering with you on another successful project.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Mike DePerna, and I'll be your on-site construction manager. Quite excited about the project. Pretty close to my own district and my own home, and we just thank you for the opportunity and look forward to doing work with your district.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
And also told them the board really appreciates short presentations. So we're on a good track.
Thank you. Work for Kim.
Oh.
Is that going to work for
It does, it does.
The iPad presentation by Jeremy LaRue with Jennifer Tushy.
Wait, not yet. Oh, sorry, it is TS, not yet. TSD Moses version. Sorry, guys.
It's not. Okay, let's try the TST BOSI's.
My fault.
Or whatever.
Or not. Thank you. I'm David Parsons, the Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services. Without a full-time superintendent, we do not have a superintendent, a district superintendent to do a presentation tonight, but I do have quite an entourage of other folks that are here to help and answer questions and say things about their programs. If they'd each stand up and introduce themselves, and then we'll go on with our presentation.
David Pitcher, Supervisor, Facility Services.
Tony DeLucci, Director of Career Tech and Alternative Ed, and I heard you say you like short presentations.
Heather Sheridan Thomas, I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services.
I'm Tom Watts, Director of Exceptional Education, for a couple more weeks till I transition to another position in the district.
Cheryl Button, I'm an Instructional Supervisor at TSD BOSI's in Exceptional Education, and I will be the Interim Director of Special Education. Thank you.
Well, thank you again for allowing us to come in and do a presentation. We try to do a presentation every year to bring you up to speed on what BOSI's is, where we are, in our administrative budget, which is the one that everybody gets to vote on. The first slide, and I think either you've gotten the presentation, you've got a PDF. At any time, if you've got a question, please stop me, and if it's something I can't answer, probably they will be able to. BOSI's really is a cooperative piece. BOSI's stands for Cooperation and Cooperative Services. We're here to help. We're here to do whatever we can do to make your lives a little simpler, a little easier. And we certainly do try to add services that the state will allow us to do. So we're here as a cooperative service to help all of us get through these tough times. These are really the different areas that BOCES provides services in. In our special education, we also do leadership things that Heather will speak about in a few minutes. Our shared services, such as the central business office, and all of the cross contracts that we either can't do or you want something different that you can buy through the other BOCES that are the other 37 BOCES in the state. These are the three educational pieces of our BOCES, and at this point, if each of them in these areas could give us a little idea of what it is that they do and how they deliver that, I think that might be a good idea for you to hear from each of them. So.
Well, I'll just lead off for exceptional education. Generally, that's students with special needs. We work closely with the CSE department here and construction services with Sarah. We serve students across the spectrum, K-12, age 5 to 21, as your district does for the region, in any number of services, mostly in our center-based program where we serve students who are enrolled right there on campus. We also convene a number of regional councils as well. And we're always growing and always expanding and coming up with new programs to serve the districts as well.
We sit here looking at each other like who's going next. As most of you know, we serve the needs of the students who are interested in participating in career and tech ed programs. Right now we have 14 career and technical education programs. By the end of the year, 13 of the 14 will be New York State approved, which means that we will now have the ability to offer academic, embedded, however you want to refer to it as, integrated academics for both math and science, which simply means that when John wants to send a student to the Career and Tech Center who needs a math or a science in order to graduate, we will no longer have to pull that student out of a career tech ed class and place him in a math or a science lab. That student will be allowed to, by virtue of the approval process approved by the state of New York, receive credit for both math and science over a 2-year period of time. The high school principal will be the final say in terms of conveying that credit to the student, but we offer that to you as a part of our offerings. We're constantly trying to grow, but we also have to pay very close attention to what students ask for and what counselors, parents, principals ask for. So if I had to make a request, I would say, please be aware of what your students are interested in. We can't build it and hope that they come, because that's reckless. But we would like to expand our offerings. We've changed our programs over the years, and we're constantly looking for new options for students along the lines of college and career readiness pathways. So, you know, I could talk for a couple of hours, but somebody said they like short presentations, so I'll end it there, Gary, but thank you for having us tonight.
Our next slide actually talks more about the things that Heather does, so we'll have her speak for those.
So, BOCES offers a large amount of services around educational initiatives, and we really try to keep a track of the things as they come up and assist districts in doing what it is the districts need to do. So the examples I gave you tonight are the race to the top, where we've presented large amounts of information and professional development to teachers, administrators around Common Core learning standards. We go and get the training and bring it back so that all the teachers can do their teaching, and then we can bring them the most streamlined version and up-to-date version of what they need to know. An example was today at BOCES we had, I believe, close to 60 K through 1 teachers and their principals learning about the new K2 Common Core learning standards and spending the afternoon planning how can you take what you already have in your primary classrooms and match it with the new Common Core materials. Do you want to adopt a lot of the new Common Core? Are there pieces that would strengthen your program? So really trying to help districts make those decisions and create the curriculum that they can move forward and be in alignment with the mandates of New York State. And so that's one example. We also provide lead evaluator training to all the principals and data-driven instructional workshops. So we keep up with the pieces that are required for Race to the Top. Another example where we just kind of jumped into the a new felt need was the Dignity for All Students Act. As soon as that was approved and passed, we knew that we needed to provide assistance to districts, and we have created a separate service for that where we can train we can train teachers, we can train paraprofessionals and other not the teaching staff, but all the rest of your staff, and as well as do presentations for students. So we really provided, and we've done a lot of the training that's needed for your Dignity Act coordinators, which of course every school has to have coordinators for this program. So our youth development department has really moved in and done that work. And then one of the things that when when this region initially got the Race to the Top money, one of the things the principals and superintendents said that they most needed help with was providing the best possible education for special education students. And one of the things we said, for those that are out in your district, not those that, and we said, well, we'll use that money to hire an inclusive education specialist, which we did. I think we have one of the few Race to the Top inclusive education specialists probably in the state, if not the country, but that's what the districts wanted, that's what we hired, and she assists by going out and modeling and coaching, by offering workshops on co-teaching and other related topics. So that's just an example of a small number of the many things we do to try to help the districts move forward with educational initiatives.
Thank you. Any questions for? Okay. We'll move on to the shared services. These are the non-educational pieces that are shared services. This is just a short list of things that are on there. The technology, I think pretty much everybody buys into that one. Fingerprinting is a one that Dave's group provides. Instead of each of our districts having to have the $18,000 electronic fingerprinting, we provide that service and spread that over all of our districts. The shared business office is another one that Williamsburg has purchased and continues to support, and that continues to grow. So those are just a short list of some of the other shared services that we do. Anything that we don't do, there's always the opportunity to go to another BOCES to buy that service through a cross contract. Most of our districts buy the policy manual service through Erie. The state aid management, which does the Medicaid filings and all that. DCMO does it. It makes a lot more sense for them to do it rather than us to retrain and have to handle that. So things that can be done long distance, we encourage it actually. If another district is doing it, there's no sense of us reinventing the wheel. So again, that's just a short list of some very common cross contracts that our districts do. This is a list of most of the grants that we've procured. One of the things that we do is we try to go out and find grants that will support our districts either totally, or things that will support BOCES that then therefore supports you folks. The one that's way on the bottom is the newest one. That's an initiative that is a collaboration between Cayuga BOCES and TST BOCES. It's, what is it, 1.3 mil, I think it is. And there's a good chunk in there that's directed specifically to TST BOCES, but it allows the two BOCES to then access a lot more things in there. It's actually not just Cayuga, it's OCM, it's the JMT, the Joint Management Team, which is made up of OCM, Cayuga, TST, and Oswego BOCES. So that was the money that was put across those four BOCES. This is a slide that we do every year.
Dave, I have a quick question.
Yep.
The personnel that are associated with the youth development, drug quiz, and all of that, are they totally funded out of those grants?
Some of it is. We do have some that the districts all
Youth
buy.
development folks are funded by a combination of grant. They're funded by a combination of grant funding and a small amount of COSER funding. So there is a 504 COSER, which is which is youth development. So it's a combination of funds. They get actually out of a number of different grants, the funds. And then there are some funds that districts specifically allocate for instance, services of a youth development person. If you want somebody to come to your district to do a particular service, you may put money into that COSER for that, to do drug or alcohol referrals or those kinds of things.
The Dignity Act funds that the districts are all buying into that service.
Yeah,
That's an example of local funds versus grant. Same people, but we try to use as much out of the grants as we can, and then what the districts want us to do above that, we'll certainly go after it.
This grant you just mentioned, is that part of this virtual advanced placement grant, or is that something separate? That this total JMT grant, this 1.3 million that you're talking about?
It's the virtual advanced placement grant.
The 1.3 is the 4 JMT BOCES together, and
That-
what's designated directly for TST is 23.
Okay, so what is that?
You want me to explain that?
Yes.
It's actually a grant that is designed to provide just what it sounds like, online advanced placement courses. Over time, the goal of the grant is to increase the number of particularly,
It could be in a musical, really.
students from disadvantaged backgrounds, low SES students who are participating in advanced placement courses, and to do advanced placement courses in an online framework. So for next year, they pick 2 courses they're offering, and then the next year they'll offer some more. I think that the reason we put the whole figure up there is that we have access to some of the personnel, like the director of the grant, but we're also hiring a separate 0.5 e-learning specialist right at TST BOCES. And I think that the idea of the grant is a great one to promote advanced placement, but for me, I think the main benefit of the grant is that building of infrastructure related to online learning. It's going to be a lot of focus on how do you teach in an online atmosphere. It's going to be looking at the equipment and other kinds of infrastructure that's needed to build that. So I think that the benefit will be way beyond advanced placement. Will really move the whole idea of online learning forward in this area. So I'm excited about it for that reason.
So are you saying that you're going to offer advanced placement classes at BOCES for students in the BOCES?
That is correct. Online. Yes, that is correct. Through that grant. The first 2 are, we picked 2 that we thought no one were offering. It turns out I think Kingsburg actually offers one of them, which is statistics, right? So we're doing statistics and advanced and art history first, and then the next year there'll be 4 more.
And anybody in the BOCES can take it?
That is correct. There are some advantages to the BOCES. There are districts that are part of it because that have more of the low socioeconomic students. They get different advantages in terms of the students getting their tests paid for and some of those kinds of things. But I believe the courses are open to anyone in the BOCES region. Actually, in the JMT. So,
Thank you.
The next slide is one that we do specifically for each district. The ARWADA is, the acronym stands for Resident Weighted Average Daily Attendance. And what that is the attendance of your district on a weighted average daily attendance. It's a way to put your district, number on your district for the number of students that you have compared to all the other districts that are in the state and in our BOCES. So you have around 1,250. Our total for our BOCES is 13,007. So if you look at that, you're around 19 or 9% is what Trumansburg makes up of our BOCES. Your ARWADA rate for this particular year, current year, is 72%. The different levels of participation in all of our CTE and exceptional and alt eds are listed there. Your current budget this year is around a little over $3 million, and the reason we put those numbers up, if you look at the top, you make up around a little over 9% of the BOCES, and you're using around 9.8% of the services that we're putting out. So you're purchasing right around the size you are. Some districts purchase a little bit more, some purchase a little less, depending on need. But that just kind of gives you an indication of size versus what you're purchasing of the BOCES. Any questions with that one? That one's strictly Trumansburg. For next year, we're looking at about a 1.3, and actually it's a little bit more than that at this point because the superintendents and the business officials, we're doing a second energy performance contract for next year, an EPC. That number does not include that because we didn't understand or didn't believe that we were going to be able to put it in for next year when we were putting these numbers together. And once we put them together, we go out to our districts, we go out with everything. But we're gonna do about a $316,000 EPC for next year, and rather than borrowing that money, we talked to the districts and everybody agreed to put that in next year's, pay it 1 year and get it over with. The first EPC we did was about 2.8 million, and we went out and did a lease on that, so there are expenses associated with that. We actually got very good rates, but instead of borrowing that $316,000, we talked to everybody and they decided to just pay it, get it over with, and start seeing those savings immediately. In the EPC that we're doing now, we're seeing some pretty good savings, especially in the lighting. They went through and changed all of our T12 lights over to the T5s, changed a bunch of 40-year-old boilers, updated those to the new high-efficiency boilers. So in the next EPC that we're going to start next year, we've got some hot water heaters that we need to change, and another boiler, and then we're going to change out their outside lights. We're all going to go to LEDs. So we will see some substantial savings in that. So I just bring that up that when you see that number at this point, it's actually a little bit higher than that since we've created this slide and went out on the road with this one. But you can see where the increases are. Itinerants are not unusual. I think since I started this job, the itinerant budgets have gone up. Districts are buying more and more of the itinerants because they can buy just the piece of something that they need and do it that way. Cross contracts this year are up. Last year they were actually down, but that was driven pretty much by technology purchases, which we've seen those go up and down based on need and funds in the districts. So this is the one budget that everybody gets to vote on. It's our administrative budget. It's the one budget that our budget acts just like your budget does for your constituents, your homeowners. We bring it to you, we present it, then you folks, each of the boards vote on it, and then we are locked into that particular budget for the year. This year we're looking at about a 3.5% increase. Part of that is a half-time administrative assistant that is going to be put in as per Heather talking to all of the districts for things that need to be done. And whether you want to expand on that any?
Just briefly, I currently have a .5 administrative assistant, and I'm asking for it to be increased to a .5, an additional .5 here in this piece. Mostly because I'm doing an enormous amount of direct presentation. I do all the lead evaluator trainings, and so I feel like it really would be helpful to me to have the additional person to help organize the things that I do. But in addition, all of my specialists are doing a lot more all of us are doing much more because we need to do it for the race to the top. The districts know that, and one of the most cost-effective ways to increase our productivity is to have someone who can do the organizational and clerical pieces underneath, and you can just get us kind of full force being able to present, use our expertise to do what we do expertly, and I'm not off Xeroxing my stuff or whatever. So I think it's a very cost-effective way to increase what you can get out of our department.
So other than that, we tried to keep the budgets as flat as we possibly could. We're in a negotiation year. Every contract that we have is up, so we had to budget something. I've rolled the salaries and fringes all into one line so that the rest of the world doesn't know what I budgeted for salaries, but we've tried to look at the other districts and see what's modest, and we've budgeted something, but we'll keep it at that. The rest of it, you can see that we've tried to keep as flat as possible. Same way with our income. I don't see the interest rates going up a whole lot from where they are to next year, so I couldn't change the revenue projections. Any questions with that one? Because that's the one that you folks all get a chance to vote on, and I don't want anybody to say they didn't get the information or didn't understand where we were with that one. Okay.
The proposed salaries, 1.3 million. How many positions is that for?
There's 12.8 FTEs.
Full-time educators.
Yep. Well, that's administration, there's no educators in that one, that's straight administration and support. So it's everything in the administrative offices.
Does that include health insurance and other things?
Yes, for anything that's in the administrative, yeah. And the other one that is in there, I'm glad you brought the health up. Anyone that retires from BOCES, by law, their retiree health insurance has to be in this budget. And that's why I draw that one line out for retiree health. It doesn't matter what department they retire from, it has to be paid out of the administrative budget by SED regs. So that number is huge. I was able to keep that one down below really what we were planning for an increase out of the health co-op, simply because we've got some people that no longer will need it, or have no longer need it at this point. They've passed on. So I was able to, I don't know how to say that. We don't need it anymore. I stopped there at another one, and that was it.
They're not receiving benefits.
That's good to know, that we're actually not doing that.
There it is.
Thank you.
Okay. As you can see, I did not plug numbers in for the salaries. At this point, we're in negotiations. We've plugged in the 6.5% for our health. And at this point, at the point of putting this together, I looked like I had 4 retirees. I'm probably going to have 6, but I think we're okay with that one. Retirement is the big one. I think you guys are seeing the same numbers. When you look at the percentage increase in the budgets, you're looking at about a 25+% increase. That in itself represents about a 1.7% in our total budget increase. It's a huge number. But from what the TRS representatives we've had meetings with, he said that those big spikes might slow down. He said they aren't going to stop, but we may not see those 4 and 5% jumps. We may see 2s and 3s, which we can live with.
And the pension is smoothing out.
Right. Right.
So instead of 25, it'll be 23.
Correct.
Yeah, that's not helping very much.
Yeah. It's not a good situation. I don't like seeing the prices go up when everything is going down. We did talk to them about, is there any reason why we did zeros at one time and now we're approaching the 20s. He didn't have a good answer, not as far as I was concerned.
We can do some of this in reserves, right? We do some of these things in reserves that they can't do, right?
The employee retirement system contribution is from the reserve.
Yeah, it's from the reserve. They can't do that.
Correct. We cannot have a TRS reserve. We can have ERS, but not TRS.
So which is this?
That's all of it. TRS and
This is
ERS.
it's both. It's both of this. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you know what is it the same contribution for both retirement systems, or ERS has a different contribution than TRS?
Correct, ERS is different than TRS,
Correct.
and we too cannot have a reserve for TRS.
Right. So part of this 25% is ERS.
Correct.
Do we know?
Next year, the rate that they're telling us is 20.5 for ERS percent, and 12.5, I think, for 16.5 for TRS.
Between 16 and a quarter to 16 and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a 4% jump for both of them. 4 points, which if you multiply that, if it's 12 and you add 4 points, that's a 25% jump. Yeah. Yeah. They say, well, it's only 4 points. Well, 4 points on the percentage times your budget. That's a huge jump. The capital budget, I did put in in this presentation. Originally, I had $307,000 in the capital budget. With the $316 for the EPC, that jumps that up to $623. The reason that I originally had the 307, we're moving our alternative school. This is the last year that we will be renting the facility downtown. About $294,000 to rent that a year. So next year, that budget will drop by the 317. We pulled the 294 out, put the 317 or 316 back in by request and talks with the districts in order to get that EPC paid and over with. So next year, we will see a substantial lowering of that particular budget. But I wanted to make sure that everybody understands that there was a rental in there for the alt school that we no longer will do. Dave's crew and actually Tony's and Tom's all coming together to move our alternative school up to the main campus to eliminate that big expense in rent that we've had for 20 plus years. It'll do a lot of different things, not only lower the rent, but it's also going to allow us to have the kids on one campus. We've got some alt school students that that are in the alt school that also do career tech. And when they're right there next door, they can come out of the alt school, walk to the other side and right into the career tech program without having to do any busing or so on and so forth. So it's a good move. The reserves, like we talked, we have no real reserves. We can't have an unappropriated fund balance. At the end of the year, every year, we zero our budget out. Whatever's left over that we didn't spend, we send back to our districts in the same manner that you paid us. So if it's based on an Arwada basis or a per use basis or whatever, however the district was charged for that service, anything that's left over goes back in the same manner. And we start over again that next year with a zero budget.
Do we have any left over for this year?
Yes.
We could use it.
Yes. Yes, we always do. I won't budget so there's nothing left over. Because that means at some point I may have to come out with my handout and I won't do that. I want to give you guys the worst case scenario and then send you some money back. The reserves that we do have are the ones that are listed there. Unemployment a year ago at this time was about 140,000. We had to lay off some folks in the Even Start program when that grant funding went away. So that hit that reserve pretty hard. We will build that one back up. The insurance and flex, that one is when employees have money that they put in for their flex program during the year. Those are the numbers that are on the books at the June 30th audit. So anything that we've got set aside for any types of insurance, like our dental, we're a self-funded dental program, so that's also in there. So those are the two that we actually do have money in.
The flex account, is that straight dental insurance or is that both?
Both.
No.
It's got the dental. We're a self-funded dental program, and then anything that employees put in their flex program that they don't spend comes back to the BOCES. That's the way a flex plan works. So it's those two things put together that are in that account.
Now, we're in the health insurance consortium via BOCES.
Mm-hmm.
Are you not in the same plan that we are? Do we have flex and stuff? Not we, but.
This is dental, we are also self-funded, so that's a separate entity from the consortium, the health consortium.
Right.
Didn't
So-
realize it.
So rather than buy health insurance from Blue Cross or whoever, we monitor our own plan through the consortium. But what's in that is not the health insurance. That's our self-insured dental program. Yep.
Thank you.
This is a snapshot of where each of our programs were at the time during the initial service requests. There again, we've tried to keep these as flat as possible, keeping in mind that some of these are strictly driven by request, and itinerants is a great example of that. 11%, you look at that and you say that budget's going up 11%. Well, yes it is. But it's not driven strictly because we're giving people 11% increases in their salaries. When districts ask for more things, that will drive those budgets. And those itinerants are made up of, you can see the list of all the ones that are in the itinerants. Anything that we sell to districts as a little chunk are in the itinerants. Shared business official is a shared, that's an itinerant. Speech and different things that Tom has that the districts can buy a piece of are itinerants. The shared lunch supervisor is an itinerant. So those are examples of what are in that itinerant budget. Instructional support, as Heather was saying, districts are asking for more in that type of thing. This year, the cross contracts are actually up. Last year they were down. Districts are buying more computers, that type of thing. So that one fluctuates strictly based on what the districts are asking us to do. Any questions with that one? Because I've got the folks here that, if there are, they may be able to answer for you. Okay. Some of the things that BOCES actually does to try to contain our costs, I mean, we're in business and here it is, bad for you. We try to do whatever we can do. We understand what it is. We have to be competitive. We have to do what we can do to make it cost effective to run BOCES and cost effective for the districts to survive. So those are just a list of some of the things that we've done and continue to do to maintain whatever we can do in our costs and also provide services for you folks that will help maintain some costs. Some other things that we're doing, and I already spoke a little bit about the cost reduction. Moving the community school is going to be, like I said before, a huge cost savings to us. We're always looking at other things that we can do. The second energy performance contract, like I said, will generate, it's going to cost us about $316,000. What did they say it's going to generate in savings?
About $340,000. It's not huge. The first project generated about $4 million in savings over the 18 years.
Yeah, yeah. So it'll generate savings. It's a way to get some of the services and things that we need to be done. Like I say, to get rid of some of those 40-year-old boilers that are not efficient, and at some point will go, and it's going to be a jump to try to get them worked on or get them fixed. This year, the vote has to happen sometime between the 16th and the 30th of April. And this year it's going to be on April 24th. And there will also be 4 candidates for our board that will be up for election. One of them is from Trumansburg. Candidate Dryden George Jr. is our other people that will be elected. I know Douglas Ann is the representative today, and certainly do appreciate her time and efforts on our board. So that gives you kind of a snapshot of where our vote is, and the like I said before, the one piece that you folks as board members vote on is the administrative budget. Any questions? We certainly do appreciate allowing us to come out and do a presentation. And
Steve, I have a question, I guess, probably for Heather. How large do you see the AP course offering becoming, and what kind of a timeline do you see in fulfilling that?
The actual, I don't know all the answers to that. This grant is just beginning. It started just about a month ago. In fact, the project director has only been in place for about 2 weeks. But we are required to have 2 courses on the books for the fall, the 2 I mentioned, and they're required to have at least 4 more for the next fall. So I think the goal is really to expand, and that's just within our JMT. I think the goal of the grant is to expand this virtual course collection across New York State. So there are others of these grants, not just ours. So I think in the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be quite a large and expanded number. Our grant only specifies that we have to create 6 over the year and a half of the grant. It's a very short, very specific grant. So, but I think there'll be more.
Do you have any data at all on how the kids do taking the AP tests at the end of the classes where there's no instructor involved, like an internet class?
No, I think this is really, I don't personally have data. I'm not sure that there is much of that data, because I think this is really a pilot in terms of doing a lot of it in an online environment. And I think there's a clear understanding that specifically with with the target audience, that there are going to need to be supports involved in this in terms of other kinds of supports offered, again, online personally, but I don't know that it's going to be, some of it may end up being some more of a blended model. But I think it's a good question, and I think it will be interesting to see as this grant moves forward. We will be keeping excellent data, of course, and so. In fact, at BOCES, we've actually, for this first half a year, we're using Cheryl Koval, who's our data analyst, as our e-learning specialist. So we've got a nice blend there of really keeping track of what's going on, and I think she'll be keeping close watch on it as it moves forward. But it's a really good question that hopefully I can have a better answer for you in a year and a half.
Thank you.
Blended learning, I'm sorry. You don't have to stand up, you can sit down.
No, that's
fine.
okay, it's easier to talk to you over on, since it's sitting
Okay,
back here.
when you said blended learning, did you mean that there will actually be some physical contact with the teacher as well as an online learning thing?
That's a possibility, that would be blended learning, and that certainly is a possibility. I'm not, it's, as I said, very brand new, and the way the grant reads is it's online, but we all know that, I think that there's gonna be some work on what really works, how does it really work? There's been some discussion about, are the teachers, does each BOCES have their own teachers, or are the teachers JMT-wide? So those things have not been sorted out yet. It'll be, it's really a very, as I said, very beginning process, where they've just had really one meeting where the director's been in place. Good question, though. You can probably tell my bench is towards blended as opposed to 100% online, but I don't know how that's going to work out in this particular situation.
Well, I'm just thinking we can do some stuff here and then you can do some stuff online. So if we still have some AP instruction fit where students can actually physically be in the room and interact with the teacher.
Combination.
And then, we could use that as an enhancement
Yeah.
or in addition to what
Yeah,
they're
it
doing.
would seem like that's going to be an option.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're not trying to replace, for sure not trying to replace anybody's existing courses. Let me be really clear about that.
Any other questions? I guess I'd ask the question, why not, Heather? I know that one of the things that we talk about as a board is the constant struggle of trying to offer a very rich AP course, but we find ourselves struggling between having courses of, 4 kids in an AP whatever course, and if we do, then my assumption is that Newfield, South Seneca,
That's clearly a
Lansing
district
does,
decision,
so-
is all I'm saying. It would clearly be a district decision, that nobody would say you can't have that course, you'd have to make that decision. Is that something, yeah, you might be right. And that's, again, goes right back to the idea, what BOCES tries to do is to collect up what people need in a variety, particularly the smaller rural districts, and we collect it up and offer it in a way that's cost effective to everybody. So, yeah, it's a good point here.
And I would argue that we're not running a whole gamut of AP classes with only 4 kids in them.
No.
The majority of our AP classes have pretty large enrollment. There's very selected courses that run with smaller, but you can't do an AP art, which is completely a hands-on course, could never be offered as an online course.
Right.
There are certainly contents that could be offered as online contents, and maybe even where we have a large enrollment. But that's one of those things that we just have to look at programmatically and what's best. And if we have the interest to support offering a course, I certainly always will push to offer it in-house, but I also understand there are limitations that we face in time.
I guess I was thinking of a career in tech model where we were sending students to BOCES to take those courses, so.
Yeah, we're not talking, this is not an in-place BOCES offers AP, it's definitely virtual.
Any ideas of going perhaps for distance learning as well?
Well, the new COSA will allow us to do that. We have not had much heavy interest in synchronous distance learning. At this point, it's mostly online learning. So I think that the focus will be more on online than on, a bunch of everybody sitting in the room at the same time.
Right, as we used to.
More giving people the flexibility to do it when it works for them.
Thank you.
But we do have the capacity, the potential for that if it was requested, since we now have the new COSA.
Anyone else? Thank you. And Dave, if I may, this, I'm sure we'll read through this again, and we may very well have some more questions.
Thank you very much for allowing us to come in.
Thank you.
Yeah, we interviewed like you guys are East President of South Seneca Board of Education also. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Thank you.
Okay. I got it. We'll try this again, an iPad presentation. Jeremy LaRue, Jennifer Tucci.
My name is Jeremy LaRue, and this is Jennifer LaRue. And this is our presentation on the iPad pilot program, which we implemented into the classrooms in September. So this would be a brief synopsis of how we've implemented the iPad as a teaching tool in the special education classroom and in speech-language pathology therapy. So I'm a special education teacher. I teach in a 12-1-1 classroom, grades K through 2. For my classroom right now, there are students in grades 1 and 2. And what 12-1-1 means is there can be a maximum of 12 students. There is one teacher and one classroom aide. So the special class is designed to meet the academic needs of students who are working significantly below grade level. And I teach reading, writing, and math for the morning, and the students push back in to the regular class for the afternoon. In the afternoons, I'm a consultant teacher. I push into a classroom in order to modify instruction and assignments for 5 students with disabilities.
And I'm a speech-language pathologist. I work with students who have IEPs indicating communication delays and disorders. And so it's some students who don't have IEPs who qualify for what's called speech improvement. And the students are seen individually or in small groups to target communication skills. I work in all 3 buildings, and currently I'm seeing about 19 students and using the iPad with all 19.
So iPad learning in the 12-1-1 classroom. So in many cases, traditional teaching strategies have not been successful. So if pencil and paper task is not working, why push it? So we try to use applications that can provide scaffolding, build confidence and skills, which make the pencil and paper tasks easier. Use it as an instant visual aid. If there's something that a student hasn't seen before, for example, there's a student in my class who has never seen a skunk, I can pull a skunk up on it really quickly and maybe play a quick video to help them better understand what it is and build background knowledge. The iPad allows the teacher to be mobile within the classroom and not anchored to the front of the room. There is an app on the iPad that acts as a PowerPoint remote, which is really beneficial because that proximity allows for better classroom behavior management.
I think also, in addition to the PowerPoint remote, there are apps that allow the iPad to become a personal whiteboard. So if you upload a picture onto the iPad, you can bring it right over to the student and circle things and discuss vocabulary, and it's really neat.
So although surprisingly simple, the camera application has proved one of the most valuable components of the iPad. Has allowed me to reduce the amount of paper that I use. So instead of using chart paper, I can write what I need to write on a whiteboard. If we're planning writing, for example, I can take a picture of it, email it to myself, and then I can bring it up on the smartboard the next day. It's beneficial for reviewing student work. So if I see a piece of writing that looks good, I can take a picture of it, and within the span of about a minute, I can have it up on the whiteboard to use as an example. It's really great for accommodating students with dyslexia and dysgraphia, which are deficits in reading and writing. So the picture that is up on the board right now is actually notes in the 5th grade classroom that I push into. I took a picture of the notes and I set the iPad in front of the student, so it was about a foot in front of his face, and it was easier for him to copy the notes down. Although we do modify notes, this is just another way of doing another tool. And it's a way for students to review inappropriate behaviors. So I'll play a video of a student who's, so this is a snippet of one behavior. I promised that I wouldn't play anything unsavory. So this is an example of a student who was taking too long to wash his hands. He would wash his hands for 5 minutes. And I tried and tried and tried other strategies. So I used the athlete model where I would tape him and then we would watch it together after. And it seemed to be beneficial. So this is a snippet of about 10 seconds of behavior that we were trying to change. How long did it take? How long
was the actual behavior?
It went on for 3 or 4 minutes.
They were really clean.
Coming up to the meeting.
I think it's important to note that Jen and Jeremy received parent permission to show these videos of these students at this presentation.
Guess we should have reversed that one. I just look like we got the rate.
Yes.
I'm afraid we're going to be anticlimactic on this one,
Glad
folks.
to.
We didn't get a chance to test that video. Apologies.
That's okay.
You just have to use your imagination.
Yeah, so as
you described it very well.
So as a retired professional athlete myself, I always appreciated the opportunity to watch myself, to make myself better. So why couldn't we do the same for behavior? And the behavior has been occurring less frequently.
And for shortened periods of time.
Yes.
Promote hand washing. It's not that long.
Okay. So the iPad's been great in speech therapy, speech language therapy. There are a whole host of apps that target many disorders, and most of them were developed by speech language pathologists. So, they target exactly what I'm looking for, and they're all in one device. So if I have a student with autism and I have a student with articulation problems, a student with language difficulties, it's on one portable device, and I'm not lugging 8 different bags across 3 different buildings, which is really convenient. A lot of the apps have data tracking capabilities. So instead of me taking copious notes and data by hand during my lesson, the app tracks the data for me. And I can email it right to parents on the spot. I can email it to myself. I can go back and review it later. And it really allows me to be more present during the session and be more student focused, which is great. There are many apps that offer the ability to record a child's productions to save for later. So if I have a student who's working on the R sound, I can tape them saying a sentence with lots of R's in it. We can go back, like Jeremy said, and the student can self-rate, and I can go back later and count the errors, which is really great. One of the best things about the iPad is that regardless of the child's age or ability level, it can be accessible through voice or touch. So depending on the different disabilities, if, for example, if a student can't isolate their index finger to use the iPad, you can set it so that they use a 4-finger swipe. And it really is accommodating to all sorts of needs. So I have a video clip too, but I'm not sure it's gonna play. So I'll just explain it. The video was 2 students, look how cute they are. 2 students working on different, the first grade students working on different targets, but working collaboratively. So that's another great thing about the iPad. It's so versatile that they're working on completely different goals, but they're working together for a joint purpose. So they're, get to my slide here. They're working on creating a story together based on a picture prompt, and they record their sentences and then listen to them and do a self-rating. If the one little student's working on the R sound, he'll say a sentence and I'll say, do you think those were good R's, or were they, could we do better next time? And he gets to self-rate because he can hear himself, he can hear it played back, and which is a really great skill to have, be able to self-rate your speech. It's a great opportunity for students to work collaboratively. This is an app, again, that I can save the story that the students create and email it right to the parents. And it really kind of enhances the homeschool connection. This is the app that they're using is called Story Builder, and this is an example, the screenshot of what they were looking at. So they give you a picture with lots of action happening, and they kind of prompt the students along to answer the questions. And what's great about this app is that you can make it easier or more difficult depending on the student's ability level. And you can turn off the question prompts if the student can do it without them, and it really can be used, with a variety of different students, which is great. And the cost of this app was $3.99, which is amazing. It comes with 50 distinct storylines and 500 audio clips of questions that guide the narrative. Like I said, I'm using it across all 3 buildings with all different disabilities. It targets so many different things, so versatile, and you can't beat the price. So I can't even buy a candy bar for that, I don't think.
So the findings: increased student motivation and engagement, significantly lessened prep time required for making materials, and like Jen said, when you buy an app, you have it instantly. You don't have to order anything. You order it, you buy it, you have it. It's improved 21st century skills for both students and staff. It's increased teacher efficiency, data collection, portability, parent-teacher connection, access to information, and has reduced paper waste.
So some thoughts as we move forward. Like Jeremy said, the iPad supports essential skill areas: complex communication, new media literacy, creativity, and self-directed learning. We're looking to use the iPads to reach a greater number of students, like in the RTI process. That's something Jeannie's already kind of put the feelers out about people who want to get together and kind of troubleshoot using the iPads with the RTI students. We also have a great resource in Jason Clark. He's a tech specialist from BOCES, and he's in district 2 days a week. He's here to kind of give us tips, show us new apps, troubleshoot with us. He has been a great resource. He's developed an Appy Hour where the people who have iPads can get together and share ideas and tips and things that work and things that don't work. There's also a wiki document that's circulating in the district where we can just say, hey, you might want to check out Story Builder. It's good for these things, etc. And we also want to keep exploring the full range of the iPad's capabilities, because there's no replacement for hands-on learning, and a lot of people are concerned with the amount of screen time that kids get, at home with computers and TVs and iPads. But the iPad can be used to supplement that hands-on learning, so that, for example, if the students in the first grade classroom are hatching baby chicks, then we can go in with the iPad and take a video of that process and take pictures of that process and upload it onto the smartboard and circle things and discuss vocabulary. It's just really a great way to supplement the great things that are already taking place in the classroom.
That concludes our presentation, and we appreciate the opportunity to talk about the pilot program. Are there any questions?
Yeah. Any way you can email us the presentation?
Sure.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
I really loved that. It was great.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Very well said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Revenue and expenditure outlook.
I'm going to do my Badcock's bus presentation first.
What we do. It's in this.
Yes.
I'm sure it's changed by now. It's still the first Has this changed since this morning?
If you haven't had a chance to see this video clip about the gap elimination adjustment, I just tell you, we would not be making the same presentation here at all tonight or next year, or probably the year after that, if the state of New York would fund us as they said they would. And this video very dramatically demonstrates that in 2 minutes and about 30 seconds. So with good luck and the internet, we'll see.
Gap elimination adjustment, or GEA as we will refer to it from now on, is one of the major reasons why our public schools are in fiscal peril. What exactly is the GEA? Well, back in 2010, under Governor Patterson, the state attempted to close a $10 billion budget deficit by spreading the funding shortfall around to all school districts in the state. This was accomplished through a reduction in the amount of state aid originally due to all districts. In layman's terms, you have an agreement with a man up the street to do yard work for $50 per month. He's a little short this month though, so for the same work he offers you $45 instead. The following month he is still short and pays you only $43, then maybe you get $44 the following month, and so on. Since the GEA was introduced 3 years ago, New York State schools have lost out on $6.12 billion in aid that was promised to them by law. That averages out to more than $2,200 per student in New York State over that period of time. Why does this matter to us? Because school districts only have a few options to try and make that money up. One option is to raise property taxes in order to keep programs and services sustained at the current levels. Another option is to start decreasing programs, services, and staff. Oftentimes, art, music, advanced placement courses, and support staff like counselors and psychologists are the first to go. But wait, didn't the state promise an increase in aid starting this next budget year? Well, that depends on what you define as an increase. Remember the yard work you've been doing and getting shorted on a little bit every month? Well, this month you were paid $45. That's better than the $44 from last month, but it is still not the $50 you were promised. It is actually a decrease disguised as an increase. With the state's projected deficit expected to grow in the next few years, there may be no end in sight for the GEA. So what can we do about it? Learn about how the GEA is hurting your district as it relates to programs and services. Learn about the opportunities that are being lost for your children and make the decision to act. Write letters, make phone calls, and meet face-to-face with your legislators and ask them to support bills that do away with the GEA. Log on to educationspeaks.org to learn more about advocating for school finance.
School district, over the past 3 years, it's been over $5 million, and next year alone, it's $1,700,000. And if you put that in perspective with what our leadership team has been charged with creating next year's balanced budget, it has been extremely painful to just come up with about $720,000 worth of reductions. We're a small district and we're wound pretty tight. And a change in one building can cause a ripple effect in another building. And we've been doing our best to make recommendations to our board that preserve program and maximize efficiency with using our staff and everything we do. But I think you'll see at the end of this, we're pretty much, we believe we've bottomed out in what we can recommend to the board this year. And there's the numbers, $5,235,000 through this year, and then for next year, another $1,746,000. So this is kind of a right the governor, right for legislator message. And we'll put that information right on our website, I think tomorrow, we're getting it ready to go.
Thank you, Frank.
You've been wondering what that post-it note said.
Save the earth.
Okay, so these numbers are really small. I apologize, there's a lot to fit in here. This is actually the revenue stream, and many of these numbers have already been presented, so I'll just lead you through the spreadsheet. So it's the revenue stream projected. 12-13 is the current fiscal that we are in. 13-14, again, this says projected because these numbers continue to change. And then over here we have 14-15, 15-16, and 16-17. Starting with the real property tax levy, this is the amount of revenue that we believe to generate, staying within the cap at 3.38%. Some of these other numbers remain very constant. We've gone over those before. If we move down here, these are the numbers provided by the state. You'll see this number, as I've stated previously, this number is a little bit lower than what you would actually find in the governor's runs. That's been decreased by about $74,000.
And that's because they're looking at recalibrating the interest rates on previous bonds. We are planning to apply for a waiver, which could potentially get us that $74,000 back, but until we actually have a solid answer on that, we need to plan accordingly.
Kim, you're wiggling that thing. You mean building aid? You're talking about building aid.
That's correct, the building aid number. This potentially could go up $74,000 if we are approved for a waiver, but at this point, that's the best number that we can plan on. If we move down here, this is the number Michael just referred to, the 1.8. You can see it's actually, so the state presents these numbers in two forms. This is what they said they would give us, but they don't have the money to. And so up here, they've actually, the 149,494, that's called the gap elimination adjustment restoration. So this year they said we do have a little bit more money, so we'll send the district $149,000. So it's a difference between those two numbers, but I've listed them both separately.
That's the increase in aid.
Correct. Down here, last time I drew your attention to this purple section. This really speaks to the money that the district has in reserves, and also, as you heard Dave Parsons mention, fund balance. So for 13-14, we are projecting that we would use $1.2 million of applied fund balance. So what that means is additional funds that the district has that are not specifically allocated to be used in a reserve. Down here, we have other funds. And these are locked into reserves. So we have very strict guidelines on how we can spend them. So the $110,000, this is an increase over the last time I presented it to you. Before we had it around $84,000, and I've increased that to cover potential unemployment fees that we anticipate incurring. Transfer from the debt service fund. We also have a debt service fund, not to be confused with a reserve. This is again where the district had excess fund balance and the state came in and said that we had to apply that to pay off our debt services. So if you pay attention to the purple color here, you'll see as we move out toward 16-17, we're trying to wean the district from these numbers because those pots of money are being depleted. So steadily we'll decrease those numbers. Down here at the bottom, $476,000 from the employee retirement reserve. As Dave Parsons also said, we're not allowed to have a teacher's retirement contribution reserve, so at this point we'll just take that money from the employee retirement reserve to meet that obligation. And that's projected to cover the majority of the obligation. The big number to pay attention to at this point is $24.3 million. That's our revenue stream projected for 13-14. As we move forward, again, all numbers here remaining relatively constant. This tax levy increase, I calculated at 3.4. Obviously, we have some choice there, so that number could be greater. And again, that tax cap calculation could be last year was 2.7, this year 3.8 is within the cap. So it's still a bit of an unknown. And as you move across, you can, I think the yellow line are the numbers to pay attention to. So we went from 24.3, which is projected for 13-14. 14-15, we're looking at 24.4. 15-16, 23.4. Now the drop in that, and then again 23.6 for 16-17. The difference from here to here is that we are running out of the fund balance. So that additional money. Something to be pointed out in 14-15 is I have $1 million slated there. We have some choices. We could make that $700,000. Any number that we reduce here means we pick up in the expenditure budget. So if I decrease that to $700,000, that means we have to find a $300,000 reduction in the expenditure budget. So these are the next years that we really need to focus on, because that's where some really difficult decisions will have to be made, even more difficult than this year.
So if I may, Kimberly, if we were not using the $1.2 million that we've rolled over the last couple of years and then we're weaning ourselves because we won't have that money, the situation would be a lot worse than what we're facing today.
Yes, and once I show you the expenditure projections, I actually have some notes and you'll really see the difference between the
So
two.
Kim, what was the cap number last year? Tax cap?
2.7,
So this year it's gonna be 3.8?
3.38.
3.3. What impact does that have monetarily? What's the?
Last year it was 259,000 and this year it's 329,000 in additional revenue.
So 75.
Okay, again, apologize, lots of numbers, they're hard to see. New York State breaks the budget into three parts: administrative, capital, and program. And in the green, these numbers are really difficult to see, I apologize. Again, same thing, expenditure budget, these are the components. Green is administrative, purple is capital, which really means debt service, operations of plant. Program is everything it takes to run the school to educate our students. So obviously program should be the largest part of your budget. Over here are the 13-14 projections, and over here are the adjustments that we have proposed that the district could make in order to make our expenditures match our revenue stream. So here, you can't really see that number very well. We have decreased the administrative budget by I believe it's 26,000.
26,000.
I can't tell if it's 26 or 28. 26,000. That's in part due to some personnel change and also some Board of Education decrease in conferences and decrease in dues. At the same time, you'll see the number that's not in parentheses. Parentheses are negative numbers. The 30,000 is the district feels that after this year, we will have to make some really big adjustments to our expenditures. And so we are proposing that we actually take some money to set aside to invest in some longitudinal studies with someone that has expertise that can make that $500,000 recommendation and keep your school solvent. Capital, $38,000 reduction, that's in personnel. At the same time, you'll see in addition to the expenditure there, in the contractual and equipment line of $75,000. This is really to cover those unanticipated expenditures as we narrow the budget line. We realize, especially recently with that concern about the roofs, that if something were to go drastically wrong, we really don't have the money to pull to pay for those expenditures. Could be a refrigerator. This past week we replaced a hot water heater. We have a water softener that we're replacing. If we had a refrigerator go, so that 75,000, we're feeling more comfortable about having that there in case something did go wrong. Program and instruction, $540,000 reduction. That speaks specifically to staffing changes or reductions. Salaries of $100,000, you'll see an increase. That increase is around sequestration. At this point, the last information I had was a 6 to 8% decrease in federal aid, which is around $53,000. We do have a cushion there. At this point, we're not sure where sequestration will fall, so that number could potentially change. Fringe benefits is $103,000 reductions. I apologize, that should be in pink to be with the program component. And that's a direct decrease in benefits associated with these staff reductions. In the benefits line, this is, there's several numbers that compose that $45,000. I increased the unemployment insurance expenditure, $25,000. That's directly offset by the revenue stream that I just showed you. In addition to that, I added another individual and another family package of insurance in case we have someone on staff that is not currently carrying those and would like to. That's the district's responsibility. And so over here you can see total proposed adjustments in the amount of just under $709,000. Increase to expenditures, and they're stated right here, the ones that I just went over, $250,000. And you'll see this number, 24.3, matches the revenue stream for 13-14. Over here, 14-15, 15-16, 16-17. Moving across. For the most part, the only increases you will see are contractual. So contractual increases in salaries and program, capital, and administration. Percentage increases for BOCES services, percentage increases for benefits. And the most important numbers are down here to pay attention to. 24.8 is a projected expenditure budget, keeping most things flat outside of those contractual obligations. 2015-16, we moved to 25.8, and 16-17, we moved to 25. I think that's either 9 or 9. 9? Thank you.
I can't tell them up here.
Now I just want to go to my notes for a second, because the real comparison between the expenditures and the revenue. So for 13-14, at this point, our revenue stream matches the expenditure stream. For 14-15, the difference between, and we know this today, keeping most things flat, the difference between our revenue and expenditure budget is $477,000. So what that means is July 1 of 2014, I know we're $477,000 short today. Moving forward, 15-16, and if I go back to that revenue slide, this is because we have, in 15-16, we have run out of the fund balance to apply. The difference in 15-16 is $2.3 million. So we know July 1, we would be short $2.3 million at that time. It only gets worse from there. So if we were to look at increasing taxes in 15-16 to make up that deficit of $2.3 million, right now that would be about a 24.4% tax hike.
In 2015,
15-16.
Make sure to get the right year on that.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone leaving that information.
At the end of 13-14, we are short roughly $477,000. So that's at the conclusion of that school year. Okay, again, the spreadsheet filled with numbers. These are the reserves, long-term planning. If we look at the amount of money that we have in reserves, this is where we took that additional money that was taken from the taxpayers and we locked it into reserves. Again, each reserve has a specific purpose and can only be spent down in that certain way. So if you look at, this is beginning of 12-13. What it shows is just over $7 million. So again, money that has to be spent on specific purposes. So we can't take that money and just make up for the deficit that we're facing. We have to play it out and use for unemployment, which right here, this year we're taking $30,000 to pay for unemployment. $420,000 we took this year to meet the retirement contribution for ERS. $342,000 we took out of the vehicle and equipment to pay for buses, and $3 million we took out of the capital building reserve for our new capital project. So as you can see, at the end of this year, we are already down to, I've got to look at my sheet because that's far too small, $3.2 million. In addition to that, what's not on that sheet is we have unappropriated fund balance, which means it's not attached to anything. Typically, districts carry about 4%, and that is, I used to call it the untouchable, but it's not untouchable for long. We're going to start spending it soon. And that was in place just in case you had to hire additional teachers. If you had special education students coming to the district and you needed to meet their needs and you had to build an 811 classroom, that's where you would dip into to fund something like that. So if you look all the way across, these numbers are slowly being depleted. And the projection is, and again I have to look here because it's far too small. In 15-16, we actually have, besides the money that is locked up, which is down to $1.1 million, that money is locked up into reserves, so we can only touch it by spending it down in those specific ways that I've already touched on. So what that means is that the following year, we no longer have fund balance to apply, and that 4% is down to $398,000. 4% of the budget is usually hovering just over $1 million. So we've even depleted sort of our emergency money at that point. Down here we have the debt service fund, not to be confused with a reserve. I put it on the same sheet because it functions very much like a reserve. You can see here it's $2.8 million. This year we took $630,000 out of that reserve to meet our debt service obligation. This is a difficult concept, but essentially what we're doing is we receive operating and general aid it's actually building aid from the state. And we dump that into our general fund. And then we get that debt service bill. And what the district has been doing since they were in the situation where they had excess fund balance is they would take money from the debt service fund and pay a portion of it. And they would receive the aid and they would dump it into their general fund and essentially fund other expenditures. So we've been living beyond our means when it comes to debt service. And I wrote down a couple of examples. So in 12-13, the difference between the debt owed, the aid we received, and the amount that we paid out in debt service, we actually spent an additional $208,000. So what that means is we've created a dependency in the general fund. We're living beyond our means by at least $208,000. Your aid that comes in should offset your debt for the most part, but we have taken even more from the debt service than we needed to fill that gap. And this specific fiscal, we took to the tune of $208,000. For 13-14, we weaned ourselves just this much of that. And in 13-14, let me find my figures. We've actually reduced it to $161,000 beyond our means. So we cut $40,000 out of it. And obviously everybody can equate $40,000, what does that mean to the district? It's a big deal. So it's hard to wean ourselves from that dependency, but it's very important to consider this in our planning because you can see here in 17-18, we are about out of the debt service funds. And what that means is at that time, when our building aid comes in and our debt service bill comes in, we have to make up the entire difference. And right now we're not doing that. Michael, take this part.
Well, as we left the board meeting a couple of weeks ago with what we thought was pretty clear direction to meet the budget challenge of around, Kimberly had identified about $308,000 for next year, and that includes the sequestration and everything else. The leadership team has been meeting, and I didn't know we could cut district-wide supplies any further, but I guess we did, and that's $15,000. Is that how much that was?
Yes. Yep.
Transportation maintenance commitment to reduce that by another 10. The Board of Education conference dues, we've talked about that a couple times this year, that the NISBA dues are pretty expensive, but there they are. I think they're $7,600. Yeah, and maybe how we'll figure that out next year. Public relations, there's still a little bit of money that we left over in that account to do some things with our website, and we're going to learn how to do it on our own. Another cleaner, we abolish a position, reduce our athletic director position from 0.75 to 0.5, which is a 0.25 reduction. Abolish a counselor position. And as you know, as I said earlier, in a small district, pretty soon everybody gets involved and you start sharing people across buildings, and that becomes another challenge. As it turns out, looking at both the middle school and high school together, we can, I don't know how else to say it, come up with an abolishment of 2.0 English teachers. Team leaders, and some of these are very painful because these are the ways we make our schools work. Team leaders, to abolish that stipend. District-wide conference monies, I don't know how much we reduced there.
That line is actually reduced to $1,000 for each building within the expenditure budget, but we have over the years built a nice pool of professional development money through the BOCES. So it was thought that we will access their professional development more.
Cut down on our own industry. Due to low numbers, and this is an ongoing conversation, we believe we can not have JV baseball and JV softball and go to a modified A baseball and softball. And in our high school, we can abolish 0.5 mathematics and 0.5 social studies. Some of that's right sizing, just over the years we're down, and some of that is just squeezing the master schedule pretty hard. Where we would have offered 4 or 5 sections, now we'll offer 3 or 4.
So that in combination with the first round of adjustments that were presented at the last board meeting or the meeting before that, that totals the $708,882. I think also we were going to mention here that if we had not received the gap elimination restoration amount of $149,000, that number would look worse yet.
Yeah, it would have been 708 plus 149, which, as you recall, in November we were presented with 820,000, and we're like holding hands with 820,000 if we hadn't received that little bit of money from New York State.
Okay, again, this is an old slide. It just speaks to right here. This is the falls within the tax cap. 3.38%, which generates an additional $329,000 in revenue. And if we were to not consider any of the abolishments and we were looking to go out and collect through our tax levy, the $708,882 through tax revenue, we would be looking at a tax increase of 7.3%. Taking that to $20.44 per $1,000 of assessed value. I think that's it.
If the board has any questions, and then I would, because this is a pretty hot topic, I would like to give the audience an opportunity to ask questions pertaining to this, if no objection.
Kimberly, is it possible to put up the cuts from our previous board meeting just to sort of refresh our memory? Thank you.
Just give me a second time.
So what you said, Kimberly, was
Right there's good.
to raise it 7% to cover that 700,000 would be 20.
7.3% would be what we needed to go out to raise the tax levy. And that would take it to $20.44 per $1,000 of assessed value. If your home is valued at $200,000, it would be $340.66 a month.
And what would, I missed the beginning of that, Kimberly. What would that accomplish then? That 7%?
Just throwing it out there, we've had people ask what would it be if we went over the cap to avoid the adjustments? Or not over the cap, I'm sorry. What would we have to go out to raise the local revenue in taxes in order to cover all of the adjustments? And that would be a 7.3%.
Would cover the entire 700,000.
Right, 3.38 right now covers it with these adjustments.
300 per month?
Per year.
$300
The yearly amount would be $4,088 on a $200,000 assessment.
So $4,000 a year.
Yeah.
Sorry, we have to wait for the balls to cool before we turn this on.
Kimberly, can I make sure I'm understanding you, because we talk about where we're at with 3.38.
Yep.
And then does it take another 7% to get that, right?
Yeah, the 3.38 generates $329,000.
Right, but don't we need $329,000?
And you need 700,000 on top of that.
Yeah, we need another 700,000 on top of that to wipe this out, no?
Which one is?
No, because 3.38 generates $329,000.
Yes.
And our shortfall is just over $700,000.
No, but I think
So
that
7.3% gets us $708,000.
I think that I'm just talking with you here.
Good, I'm glad
It
you
shows
are.
you how it's a team effort.
Because we
right?
just put this together. Sure.
Well, is the 3.38 and all of our cuts gets us a balanced budget.
Correct.
So to get that $700,000 that we've just proposed in
Yes,
reductions
you're
is
correct.
on
Oh,
top.
you're correct, I'm sorry.
So we're
Yes.
really talking about 10%.
10, yes. I apologize.
Yeah, well, really, it's 700,000 plus 329,000.
Yes. Thank you.
I don't know, I guess, I don't know why that came to my head. It didn't until just now, really. We've been talking about this for weeks. So.
Any administrators care to comment on what was just presented? We all know it's a difficult challenge.
Well, we've very different than it's been in the past, right? We've got some consistency and that's in those chairs. So we know that this was a team decision. I sort of wondered if there's any other comments you'd like to add to what Michael and Kimberly talked about.
This is painful. This was painful. This process was painful. Watching things go that people care about was painful. The way we do business has to change. That's painful. I think when we're looking at this and we're really trying to dissect this and, trying to, foresee into the future of how we do business, we have made every cut that we think, we can make without sacrificing the leg. And I think that's it's not an easy thing. And it's a fortunate thing that we did it together and that we were in conversation about it, because I think there was a lot of, amendment of things that had to happen and the discussion that was circling, certain positions and, how we do business. As the middle guy, when something happens down here, I have to make sure that how it affects my building and, and vice versa. So I think that's been part of the process, and, nothing about it was easy and I think it was helpful to have some board input last time, so that we could sort of refocus what we needed to do and, what decisions we had to make. And, I think that ongoing discussion is going to be, really important to our decision making, as we move forward here.
The question that I think that's on a lot of folks' minds is what is our program going to look like next year when we make all these cuts? Will we still be offering kids the same quality? I would love to say yes, but I would be lying to you. I believe that the cuts that we're making are going to have a profound impact on the quality of the program that our kids experience in this district. It isn't just about the classes that we offer. It's about the workload that our teachers face every day. Mike and I sat down, and this is something that it's really taken me 2.5 years to learn. That doing business where I came from a much larger school, and doing business where Mike came from in a much larger school. I came from a school with 1,600 kids, and I now work in a school with under 400 kids. And the business of being a teacher in this school is very different than that being a teacher in a district, in a much larger high school. And it really did. And it's the mistake that put me in a couple of pitfalls last year when we were going through this process, because I made some mistakes. The reality is my teachers do an extraordinary amount of work beyond just teaching the class. Mike and I have talked a lot about this idea of right sizing, 26 kids to a class. The problem is that I don't offer enough sections of anything where 26 kids make sense. Because if I have 26 kids to a class, that means I can offer 2 sections with 52 kids. If I have a class that has 56 requests, now I got to trip that, and now you guys are going, well, why are the class sizes so small? Because if I go with 2 sections with 56 kids, then that's 28 kids in a class, which is bordering on complete chaos in our high school. But if I go to 3, it's only, 17, 18 kids in a class. And now you're saying, wait a second, why are class sizes so small? The reality is that my teachers teach, and this applies across the board. So I'm not just speaking selfishly for the high school. I mean, this is true for middle school and elementary school. But if you think about what my teachers do, I have 34 teachers right now in the high school. And those teachers are called upon to teach 6 periods a day. Many of those teachers have 3 and 4 different preps that they're preparing. That means that with 3.5 teachers, we're cutting a half teacher in each in 3 of the core areas. By going to 3.5 teachers, that means that on average they have a minimum of 100 kids. So you think about an elementary school teacher who's teaching 5 subjects to 20 kids, 22 kids, 23 kids, 24 kids, depending on the class. They're going home every day because those teachers have 40 minutes of prep, and that's ridiculous to think that they can plan for 5 lessons in 40 minutes and provide kids quality feedback. The high school teachers, middle school teachers are preparing kids for 3, 4, 5 different contents, just like elementary school teachers do. But my teachers have 100 kids that they're providing feedback to. So in the reason I talk about the size of school, my last district, when we cut an English teacher, we cut 15 to 14. And you took the 80 to 100 kids that teacher worked with, and you spread them out over 14 other teachers. You cut half a teacher in my building, that's 50 kids that have to go to another, that get put onto another teacher. So my teachers are increasing 15, 20 kids that they have to provide additional feedback for. So the job isn't just the class size. The job is, how many preps am I preparing? How much time am I given during the day? My teachers teach 6 periods. They have 40 minutes to prepare lessons for 4 different preps. They have 40 minutes a day in which they also have to provide quality feedback to our kids. That's 40 minutes of which time they are available to also, because most of my teachers also they're doing independent studies. They're meeting with kids to do interventions. They're an advisor, they're a coach, they're involved in things. So I just, cutting a half a teacher sounds like, it's barely anything. But that half a teacher is a profound impact on my teachers. It either means that we cut off all of the electives in that department, or that means that my teachers all go to 4 preps, and that means that my teachers, on average, have over 100 kids that they're trying to provide quality feedback to, versus the 80, 85 that they've been working with this year. So that means that they have, on average, about 30 seconds a day to provide a student with feedback. And think about preparing. So I know that sounds like a silly analogy, but I want you guys to understand, I think there's a lot of perceptions out in any community that, teachers, they've got such a cushy schedule, they get the summers off. When you think about what our teachers are doing, my teachers are working an extraordinarily hard job, and they're doing it extraordinarily well, given the circumstances. Because remember, on top of everything that they're doing this year, they're also learning the Common Core. They're also doing all the documents related to the APPR. So they're doing an extraordinary amount of work outside of this school building. They go home on the weekends and they work all weekend grading papers. And anybody who's taught will tell you, it isn't just a 9-to-5 job. So I know this is a long-winded way of saying this, but what I really want you guys to understand is that my teachers, and I'm not speaking just for the high school, all 3 of our buildings, because these cuts go deep into all 3 of our buildings, are going to have a profound impact on the quality of the work that they can do for our children.
I think the only thing I would add is that it's been grueling to come up with these lists and to spend time and make these decisions and collaborate like we have, but this is just the first step. If these decisions are the ones we're moving ahead with, we have to figure out how it's going to work for next year. And who's going to, we have the same amount of kids as we do this year, so who's going to be the person who helps out the student in crisis, who's going to work with a student who needs an extra intervention. So this is just the beginning. So, we have to look at then what the next steps are going to be.
I'd also like to add that a little bit more to what John had shared about Common Core and APPR. Our assessments are changing for Common Core. This year, our assessments 3 through 8 will be much more rigorous, to the tune of maybe potentially a huge percentage of our kids not meeting proficiency, which is a 3 or above. with that, you're gonna see the decrease in student performance, which is I think is more of a reaction of how our community is going to have on our schools, because our students are gonna look like they're not performing as good, even though this is the new initiative, Common Core, and to get Common Core out the door, we're putting our teachers through so much right now, giving them all of this new information, and pair that with APPR, and then increase students' course loads or the teachers' number of students that they have. You're pretty much saying that these teachers have, the only thing that they can do is instruction. And I just researched John Hady. John Hady's meta-analysis says that the two things that increase student achievement are providing students timely feedback and assessment and having that teacher-student relationship. And if you look up here, we're cutting school counselors, we're cutting social workers, we're cutting that attachment that teachers will have with our social emotional supports within the school. So we're hacking that away. We're taking the two things that we need the most, providing timely feedback to students and that relationship. And this is what Trumansburg is all about. Trumansburg is caring about your kids. You know, I came into this district, thankfully, from Gary hiring me 11 years ago as a school counselor, and I've been in every single building. We love our kids. This is what makes Trumansburg Trumansburg. And it breaks my heart to see that we're cutting the heart of Trumansburg. I'm afraid to see what this district looks like in years to come.
We should take that to send to the governor.
Well, Michael Babcock has taken his share also. I mean, it's across the district.
27 years here in this district, I think one thing that's come through loud and clear from this community and the Board of Education is the desire to maintain this $40 million worth of real estate, where we provide, I think, one of the best maintained learning environments for our teachers to work in, for our kids to learn in, and for our community to use nights and weekends. When this conversation started this year in earnest, when I hear declining enrollments, not being in the teaching environment, I'm hearing, well, smaller class sizes, we need to cut teachers, and I, for one, believe that, not understanding the impact, knowing that I'm responsible to still maintain 310,000 square feet of buildings that didn't get any smaller. They're still here. The majority of money we spent in these buildings was 10 years ago. We're starting the experience, breakdown, repairs, those types of things. And when we cut two cleaner positions out this year, that means that my 7 night cleaners that are remaining are going to be cleaning in excess of 32,000 square feet per night. Impossible. We have not yet determined what we're going to live without next year, but we will be not doing certain things. We haven't figured out what that is just yet. We're going to work through it through the tail end of this year and into the summer, but it's going to have an impact on the appearances of these buildings. So here it comes. It's going to be different. It's going to be very different.
Any questions from the board? This time, I would like anyone in the audience that has questions relating to this to, well, we may not answer at this point, but at least we'll hear your concerns.
So this isn't open forum, this is question on the presentation.
On this presentation of the budget. Anyone? We're in a very difficult position, and it's not looking any brighter down the road. If there's one message, I hope that that's the one you got, that the gap elimination has been a hindrance to us and will continue to be. I don't have the answers. I don't think any board member here does. But any decisions that we make or are forced to make, they're not going to be easy ones. We share the same concerns as everyone here. We're not the enemy. We're here to protect the institution, keep the institution running for as long as we can. And unfortunately, just as you go out in several years, it's going to become harder and harder for us to do. Please. Yes, ma'am.
Where's the art position? That was there last meeting?
Yeah, there's
If you go to
there's
that
another
page,
page.
there's another page.
Ah.
There's 2 pages. Like 3 pages. 2 of them.
There we go. Thank you.
So Mike, step up.
Excuse me, Douglas?
Could I say something?
Please.
I guess misery loves company. As you know, I just returned from meeting with our legislators and other school people in Albany. And I would say that probably 90% of the schools in the state are in the same spot. And I really do think there are a couple of additions to fill the GEA gap where we're trying to figure out how the legislature can at least get that out of the formula so that the foundation aid formula flows as it should and is slightly more predictable. But at this point in time, I really think the only power we have is to get the addresses of our legislators up on the website. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but there was a 6% cut proposed to all facilities in the state that dealt with people with developmental disabilities. Proposed sometime, I think it was last week, you might know better than I do. BOCES and a number of other groups got together a letter writing campaign. I went into Barbara Lifton's office today to talk with her, and there was literally a stack of papers, letters that high. Both houses opposed it. It was voted down. It's not going to go through. But I really do think this is the time for us as citizens, not as board members or, even parents, to just say enough is enough. This is not the way we are going to grow the upstate economy in New York. This can't be. They're simply going to have to find another way of prioritizing. And I think each of us really need to get a hold of our legislators and tell them enough is enough. We can't. This isn't going to work.
Anyone else? Thank you, Douglas. Thanks for going today.
Well, yeah, and many of the schools are looking at closing within 3 to 4 months. I mean, they're out of funds. And there are a number of things that can be done. Right now, we have a 3-year waiting period for property tax wealth adjustment. There's no excuse for that. We have computers that to be figured out in a day. Right now, it looks as if poor people down affected by Hurricane Sandy are going to be responsible for their former property wealth for 3 years. It is absurd. Things are just crazy up there. It's time for us to really take action.
Mike, do we need this anymore?
No, sir, not if you have it.
Like that. Yep.
We're not doing the question.
We done?
Technical snafu.
Okay.
We would communicate or,
Well, we were a little busy today.
yeah, we're doing it.
Moving on, looking for the consent agenda, 6A2.
So is anybody want to take anything out?
Unless anyone wants to take anything out.
Consent. So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Correspondence, a thank you letter from a student. What are the chances that student is here? This is, I'd like to read this, it was quite touching. From Duncan Fuller, says, "Dear board members and music boosters, I extend my thanks and appreciation to you for paying for my trip to the New York State Band Directors Annual Symposium All-State Band. The trip was as seniorious.
Sonorous.
Thank you.
Good English teacher.
Experience. And I appreciate your help in making it possible for me to go. The band had 5 tuba players, which is something I'm not used to at T-Bird. The sound we tubas made together was incredible as a deucelet. While I was there, I was able to buy myself a pink trumpet mouthpiece. The overall experience was one I won't forget, from having to stay up late to practicing all day and drying out my lips, and to be one to play the solos that were in the tuba parts. I'm grateful and was able to go with the help that you provided. From Duncan Fuller, sincerely. Nice to get those letters from time to time.
Nice to be able to provide those opportunities.
The administrator's report.
Well, in addition to all those other things we're doing, today was fairly busy, beginning at 9 a.m. when we were made aware that one of those monitoring bracelets had been activated near the high school, and they didn't know when it had been activated, but it caught, and they knew who the person of interest was, and we had concern immediately, so we went into a shelter-in-place / lockdown and stayed that way all day. The staff, Michael Babcock, rounded up a couple buses in case we needed to transport a lot of students after school. And about 4 o'clock, the police worked on it all day, and they found out that basically that person probably just tossed it out their window of their car as they drove by last Thursday or Friday. That they could pinpoint when it had been activated. And so they think that person was just passing through, and they'd circulated posters, followed up all kinds of tips and leads. That person has not been seen in our community at all. Wasn't ever seen, so they don't think that person's around. So we're going to have a regular school day tomorrow. Out of all that.
How was that for you guys?
Yeah, it was busy. It was a learning experience. I think there's some things that we learned as a team about how we deal with these types of things. I can brag a little bit about my staff. I sent a email out asking staff to go out. I know this happened in my building. I can't speak for the other building, so I won't. But the entire building was surrounded. There was people lining walkways, people from Wig Street. I mean, it was impressive to see that type of dismissal happen so quickly. The call went out for parents to come pick up their children, and within a half an hour, the whole building was vacated with parents picking up kids, and phone calls being made. It was impressive. It was really, really impressive.
So the communication was nice. I was on the road today. It was email after email.
It was all over.
Yeah.
Did you do the robocalling too?
Yes. Although I'm hearing that it's not working the way we think it is for sure, so we're going to talk about it tomorrow at our administrative council.
I could get
Some people say they
stopped
either
calling
get
about food
a garbled message.
You get those too?
Oh, God. For 5 cents. I know it costs more than 5 cents to make that call.
No, I think the calls are free.
Yeah, like
To you.
to me.
Cisco, would you mind also mentioning French, Spanish, because I know you're interviewing, talking to people today, so can you update the board and all of us on that?
Yeah, so I interviewed 2 candidates today for the Spanish position. And the board packet is the French position. We're going to go ahead with a distance learning environment. It won't be a true distance learning environment, but it will have some elements of that where the teacher will be in Poughkeepsie and Skype in, and students can then ask questions, and she'll use Edmodo as her way of giving assignments and collecting assignments, and there'll be a teacher in the room to facilitate some of the management stuff of the class, but that'll be that'll be exciting. It'll be exciting to see how it rolls out, and it's been quite the process in terms of how long it took. You know, how many times we posted, and you know, yielded 0 results. And you know, giving way to that process was difficult because you know, you have to sort of wait to see if it yields anything, and then you post again and wait, and you know, and in the meantime, Chris Harding-Grossfeld has been filling the gap, you know, the best she can, using the teacher's old curriculum that she left, and you know, at least offering, you know, vocabulary enhancement lessons and such. So.
And that's for the French department.
It's for the French, yeah, for the French position.
You mentioned Spanish. Is there a need for that now?
Yeah, I interviewed those 2 people this morning, so we'll be making a decision pretty shortly on that.
So one of them, or they're qualified candidates?
Yes. That's as much as I can say.
That's fine. It's nice to have qualified candidates.
I just thought I'd say that.
Well, we've had a hard time getting.
I'd preempt this, Craig.
We've had a hard time getting people to apply for these things, right?
Yes, I mean, it's
To have 2 is a big deal, right?
We had 3, and that's it, and 1 wasn't even viable, so.
That's maybe the question I should have asked, the viable candidate.
Right, yeah. So it's sort of like, okay, here we go.
And actually, the French, we had no one. I sent out an email to the other superintendents. Superintendent from Ithaca said, you too. Apparently, they lost a French teacher mid-year. And
You can't trust the French.
the person we finally found is the daughter of the superintendent from Eastfield, Cheryl Thomas's daughter. She said, "Oh, my daughter teaches French." But I'm not sure if she's looking for a job right now, but she lives 4 hours away. Cheryl said she can come stay with me and come meet the kids. So we're gonna work
Which
out
she's going to
something.
do, by the way. So it'll be like, you know, every now and then she'll come up to do some face-to-face teaching and also.
It's not as good as we can get.
Anyone else?
I attended BOCES training today with, as Heather was saying, K-2 teachers. We're looking at the modules that the state has put out for ELA. And some of them, they're all in draft form or they haven't come out yet. So it's very preliminary, but it was it was nice for us to have a chance to start to plan and talk about how we're going to implement. So it was a very productive day. And then I got to come back and watch my staff that had it all organized, how we were going to do dismissal, and all of our lockers were picked up, and lots of communication between the 3 buildings. So very good.
Sure.
The majority of my report, I'm actually going to wait. There's a motion later on this evening, and I'll hold off until then to talk about what we're going to do on superintendent's conference day and things like that. But I will add that Guy Zabels, where's Jane? She's next to her. Dress rehearsal tonight. So this weekend, March 14th and 15th, and or 16th.
It's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, right?
Yeah.
It's not, so it doesn't differ.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday at 7 p.m. And as it says on the board, it will be awesome.
Mr. Rizzo?
Yeah, the word umbrellas and buckets into play. Segue into roofs. We're actually moving forward with the roofs in a couple of different, I guess, ways. First and foremost, we're continuing in-house with patching as necessary. Roofing product supplier is sending us some free materials. We had talked about the elastomeric product that we could either spray on or roll on. They're actually going to send us a couple of buckets just for us to try out and see how that will work in some of the larger areas that we have to deal with. Kimberly and I also met with our insurance carrier last week. They're going to be the adjuster that was here for the previous hail damage is scheduling to be on site either later this week or early next week. We're going to go through the roofs again, and they are on board to support us some more if we need to for any more significant damage. And we're also moving forward with Beardsley Design to look at the possibility of the roofs being expedited and moved into this summer. We had a whole posse on the roofs last week, 5 people. Actually, a roofing contractor to actually take some core samples out of both the elementary school and the high school roofs, not only to gauge the thickness of the insulation, but to assess the roof decks and moisture that it may have gotten into the roofs or the insulation or the deck. We did a complete survey of the underside of the roof decks, actually pop ceiling tile in all the public areas while the kids were in class. And then once school was dismissed, we actually got into classrooms and looked above all the ceilings to try and make a visual assessment of any potential damage to roof deck areas, so that we can try and really isolate the areas for the architects and engineers for the design plan. So we can specifically identify areas of roofs where we know we might have a roof deck replacement. You heard from Mike DePerna from CNS. He's actually been on site almost 2 full days with me, assessing these roofs and buildings. We're already working on a potential staging plan and phasing plan for these roofs to move forward. So he's been directly involved. We hope to see preliminary drawings and design this week sometime, by the end of this week if we can. Just their first drawings and some of their details like flashing and those types of things for he and I to review. Hopefully BDA is going to be ready to send that up to Albany by April 1st if possible. Already in contact with our construction manager up here, our project manager, and we're expecting an expedited review of 4 to 5 weeks. They are already looking for it to come. In order to do that, we had to make it a single prime project, and what that means is we had to get any associated work, such as plumbing work, mechanical work, or electrical work, under $50,000. So we've looked at ways that we can do that. And that was a lot of what we did last week, but that's looking very promising, so I think there's a very good chance we might be able to get them in this summer, and that's our target right now. We'll know more by the end of this week.
Did they hire any more help in Albany? Last I knew, they were down to 1 approval guy.
Actually, they have. Our new project manager is brand new. It's kind of ironic because 2 weeks ago I spoke to her about a transportation issue. They pulled her out of transportation, and now she's project manager and facilities planning. So we have at least spoke on the phone once.
So last I knew, the primary problem was in this building, am I correct?
No, both buildings. Both buildings have the same. Right.
So you'll end up looking like we're going to do the complete roofing on both buildings?
Get it all done.
Actually, all the 1995 sections on both buildings, which equals about 75% of the total roof area of the 2 buildings this summer. That's our target.
Is Mr. Sylvester with us anymore?
No. That's, CNS is now taken over his role. The first meeting that we had with CNS and BDA, we went from the roofing project to really exploring whether we can push the whole project up by a year, the whole capital project, and finish it all by August of 2014. So that's hopeful, but it's a serious conversation to see if we can get it all done.
And other than getting it done sooner, does that save us any money?
I think we start getting state aid sooner, and so
More
yes.
expensive.
Yeah, and building materials are gonna go annual.
State aid. Plus, it just gets it to our, the voters pass it, and we get it done, so that's kind of a background. I think the roofs are #1 for this summer. We gotta get that done this summer if at all possible, but then after that, they're trying to move ahead as fast as possible.
Moving on, open forum. At this time, we would like to give district residents an opportunity to ask any questions about this agenda or about operations within the school district. Personnel matters will not be addressed in public session. Comments may be recorded and responded to by the Board of Education or the superintendent at a later date. We ask that you keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. Yes, ma'am.
Should I go up here?
Whatever suits you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sheila Kisaloff and I live over on South Street. I have a set of twin boys who are in 2nd grade at the elementary school. And I'm here today because I'm very concerned as a parent about the state of the elementary school when it comes to discipline and suspensions. If you look at the New York State report card, you'll notice that at the elementary school, we have a 7% suspension rate for children who are in grades K through 4. Whereas in other districts in the area, I specifically looked at Lansing because they have a comparable number, and they're also K through 4. They have a comparable FRPL level, which sometimes we use as an excuse for suspensions, and they're only about 4% less than we are. And so my question has been, since my boys started here in Trumansburg, is why is it that we have such a high suspension level in the elementary school when at other comparable schools it's 0%, 1%, at our high school here it's 7%. At Ithaca High School, supposedly this den of violence or whatnot, 6%. And we've had numerous conversations, numerous meetings. I have one son who is begging to be homeschooled. I should not have to homeschool my child. I should not have to look at Namaste or anywhere else for educating my child when we pay very high taxes, and we're very happy to do so in this district. We've had conversations with the dean of students, with the support team, with the principal, with the superintendent. My son right now, one of them, and I can show you his report card, 3 pluses across the board. There's nothing going on that's impacting his cognitive ability except for the fact that he feels that he is being targeted. He feels that he is not liked. Last year when he was in first grade, he loved school, loved school. He was in with Gary's granddaughter, loved school. This year, whole different story. It was flipped last year. My one son who was doing stellar this year, behavior-wise, is now, this year, last year, it was exactly flipped. And so when Sarah spoke of, I don't remember the author's name, they talked about his last name started with an M, about feedback to the students as well as relationships. I am here to say the relationships isn't just with counselors, and I'm a social worker, so I understand that relationship, or psychologists. It's with the classroom teachers. That's where it begins. That's where it ends. If the kids do not feel that there is a relationship, if the kids do not feel that they are liked, and you're right, it is very important that all of our kids feel that they are liked. And I'm here to tell you right now, my son does not feel that he is liked, and any one of you who are parents here, parents there, if you have a child who comes home begging to be homeschooled because at 7 years old he has been suspended, how many times? For what? If you look at his report card, it says his behaviors are S or S minus. To me, that's satisfactory or less than slightly less than satisfactory. Not 29 dean referrals. That's what my son has, 29 dean referrals. And I would like to know, where did this position come from? Half-time PE, half-time dean, is there any kind of credentials that goes along with that position? Which is a question that I asked at the beginning of the school year. September, email back from the dean of students. Oh, I'm sorry I couldn't get back to you. I had 7 second grade students, 7-year-olds, 6-year-olds at that time in my office. Really? I really want to know what these numbers mean, what we're doing in this district, especially in the elementary school, because my kids will be there for 2.5 more years. And Sarah, they are going to be those students who get 3s and 4s with the core curriculum. They are going to be those kids. They already are those kids. When they hit 3rd grade, that's where they are. So I would like to know what we are doing as an elementary school and as a district to help those kids who are wide breadth of average, right? At the high end of average, but have those behaviors that it seems like we're delegating elsewhere, outside of the classroom. Oops, I can't deal with that. That's not my job. Send them out. And one of the things that I said is if you build it, they will come. If there's a dean of students, and I don't know of any other school district in this area who has a dean of students. If you build it, they will come, and they are coming. 7 second graders in September in the dean's office. Really? And my biggest question is, so here is a very much loved PE teacher, very much loved, who is also doubling as the disciplinarian in this building. You're a mental health person. Isn't that confusing for kids? I'm a mental health person. That's confusing for kids. So in the suspension letter, I really wanted it written that we were going to be able to get tuition. I mean, we pay taxes for our kids to be educated, right? So one of the things that we requested in the beginning of the school year after at the end of last school year, was that when we receive a suspension letter, we would like it noted that we have the right to get some sort of tutorial outside of school. Because if they're not in school, then what are they doing? And I am here also to say that I think it is really, a disgrace that a school district of our size and our resources feels that we need to send 6 and 7-year-olds out of the building, out of the classroom. What kind of a message is that sending kids? I don't want you here, I can't deal with you here. Maybe I don't know how to deal with you here, and I need help to deal with you here. I think that's the message. And when my 7-year-old son says he wants to be homeschooled, that's not sitting right with me. So that's one of the things that I wanted to say, and I wanted to mention also that the tutoring when the kids are suspended. And I mean, I just really have to emphasize, if you look at the NICEAD report card, 7% of kids in grades K through 4 are suspended. Really? And this is out of school suspension. I'm not even talking about in-school suspension. This is out of school suspension. Why do we have such severe discipline problems? I mean, should we be like a school like Caroline recently was, as a dangerous school? I don't think so. I don't think we're a dangerous school. I really do not. I think we are a school that does not know how to deal with children who do not fit in this box. And if you don't fit in this box, and you don't conform, and you don't toe the line, out you go. Someone else is going to deal with you.
I don't know if you want me to
Really?
respond at all.
Excuse me?
I'm really not done.
Well, we're
I've
going-
gone more than the 2
Yes.
minutes. Thank you, John. Can I pass something out to the board members? Would you be willing
If
to
you-
read something?
If you expedite, please.
Pardon?
If you're quick, yes.
Okay. I brought a printout of Dr. Ross Green, who is a psychologist, and he's very well respected in the field of children and schools. He teaches in in lots of different places. And this is a check mark for schools about whether their discipline policy is working for them and working for all kids. I'm not just talking about the boxed kids, I'm talking about all kids.
Okay, if you please hand that out.
Yeah.
And we will look into this, and at a later date, we'll give you a response to
John,
this.
would you be willing to just kind of make sure other people get it?
We understand the frustration.
And I'm here to tell you I'm not the only one, okay?
Thank you.
Did you have something else?
No? That's about it.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Anyone else? In the back room.
Hi. This may seem relatively minor in the big scheme of things, but I just really had to ask, because I'm a little confused about the elimination of the JV softball program due to the lack of numbers, because right now we have 18 girls on the team, and that's actually with 4 underclassmen, up on varsity. And when modified starts in a couple weeks, they've been averaging 20 plus students, so with all 3 programs, that's 50 plus girls. So I was just a little confused about the elimination of the program due to the lack of numbers. So that's my question.
This is for next year to begin with, the next budget. But I would expect that you would ask that question of the superintendent or the
Our numbers and recommendations come from Matt Taves and.
Okay,
and he's
because my
talking to
concern,
John
unfortunately,
King.
is if that program is eliminated and the sophomores, I have like 11 freshmen on the team right now, and they'll be sophomores next year. And so if that many girls have to go to play varsity, then there's gonna be cuts, instead of them being able to play another year of JV softball. So that's all I wanted to point out.
Well, we're trying to manage this as best as we can. We certainly understand.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? Moving along. New business. Looking for a motion to approval for the addendum to the CNS Technical Resources Contract as presented.
So moved.
Discussion?
What is this?
Yeah. Mike, do you want to explain the contract?
This is the people we just hired?
Yes. No.
We've already got an addendum.
This is different.
No, were you able to send the email out? Okay. If you recall, for the last several months, we have been working with CNS companies from a different perspective to try and bring a new energy management system into the high school. That project has morphed several times and been reviewed at the mechanical level at SED on at least 4 separate occasions, changes made. In the last revisions that's before you now, we actually had to take out some of the bells and whistles. We still have would have a completely operational new energy management system head end, which was originally intended, but it took away a little bit of the control of our air handlers that we wanted to add in, some additional things. State Education Department does not believe that by adding those in, we would A, generate the savings that were being projected, and B, they have concerns about the existing mechanical equipment, whether it can even support the changes. So what CNS has agreed to do is we have taken that scope of work out of the project and any proposed associated changes, and they have waived their engineering fees to make this project whole for the district. So instead of a $100,000 project, we're going in at a $58,000 project. I've already been in communication with our project manager. We have their full support. So this is, if we're going to look at energy management system for the high school, this is our only option at this point to get it done this year. But we do. Let's go.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 10B, acceptance of a donation from the TCSD Foundation, Inc. and Bill Capel for the amount of $500 to the elementary school library to purchase books in memory of Carol Capel.
So moved.
Second. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Authorization to sign the tentative TTA agreement. With the motion?
So moved.
Second. Wait a minute. Oh, not there yet. Any discussion? Other than, I like your comment, longest one ever. All in favor?
No, there is discussion.
Oh, discussion.
I just want to quote something from Paul Heiser, who's the NYSBA newsletter guy. With pension and health contributions climbing at an alarming rate and a property tax cap in place, salary increases of 3% or more annually are unsustainable, and if left unchecked could lead to a greater number of teacher layoffs. Many school districts, however, have recently been able to negotiate teacher contracts with no or more reasonable salary increases. I think that I know you guys everybody's worked really hard at this, and thank God I haven't been involved, but the net result's not acceptable to me. It's, in my business, I make so much one year and a different amount the next year, and I've had kids in college for 8 years now, trying to help them. Some years I can really help them. Other years I can't as much. And I sort of feel like this is the same. I mean, we are really tight here and getting tighter. It looks like we're going to be bankrupt in 3 years, really. And something's got to change, of course.
but, you know, for every % of raise at $60,000, that's the teaching job. And, you know, I just can't, I can't accept the level raises. It was good, there were some healthcare concessions, and that was good. Although that 85-15 didn't get conceded at all. So I can't vote in favor of this.
Anyone else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Opposed.
Oh,
We don't have a majority to pass that.
I'm sorry?
What did you vote, John?
You have 4 votes.
You're
Yes.
close.
Yay, yay, yay.
Yeah.
Okay.
4-2.
Ten D, acceptance of stipulation of settlement.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Can we discuss this or not? I don't believe so.
Well, I think you can say that this is a result of having a teacher go between 2 buildings and to compensate them for additional, they ended up teaching more than is officially in the contract. Not by much, but a little bit, and this is the agreement.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? E, approval of a service contract for the Onondaga Cortland Medicine Board of Cooperative Extension Services for Rich to furnish certain services to the district pursuant to Education Law 1950.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Is this him?
This is him, and it could be him, and we'll all weigh in.
Okay.
Yes, this is a good idea, but it could start with him.
Happy to answer.
Yeah. I think you should
Favor?
mention what this is about.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
No, here we go.
Yes, so what you have in front of you is a proposal to approve a resolution for undertaking a lease. We acquired some new technology. It's a 5-year lease to bring some additional tablet technology into the high school to prepare teachers for the future initiative that we'd like to see undertaken at the high school in the coming years. More detail if you'd like.
So it's 5 years at $100,000 total, not more than $100,000
Not more than
total.
100 grand, that's correct.
For 5 years.
Yes.
This essentially provides all the staff in the high school plus additional staff that are in the other buildings related to RTI and service provision with iPads. And then, so this is sort of the first phase of implementing a program of one-to-one technology in the high school, as well as some other technology initiatives. But essentially allows us, this is what Mike, quite frankly, has done to make this a very affordable way of getting the technology into our kids' hands in a way that we really see this as a zero, you know, it's gonna be a cost neutral long-term because of many other aspects where we're saving money.
Reduce printing, reduce textbooks.
Yeah.
So is this, how much, so if it comes to up to 20,000 a year, how much of that 20,000 is aidable is the question? Do you know, Kimberly?
It's all aidable. I mean, it's all qualifies for aid.
It all qualifies for
It's
aid.
2 buses.
So do we know what the rough, real bottom line is for this?
This current fiscal, we get 72.4% aid, and the projection for 13-14, I want to say, is dropped to 69 points.
So roughly 70% of this cost is borne outside this district, so $3,000 a year. 5 years, so $15,000 for $100,000 worth of use. Okay.
And we're looking at a similar like we will be looking at making a similar motion in the summer, which would then trigger the purchase of the devices for our students.
And what devices are those, John, or Mike?
The teacher devices are an iPad 2 Wi-Fi only, 16 gigabit tablet. And right now, the iPad mini is being talked about for the students.
And how does that interface with the tablets that we currently have?
They're wireless devices similar to the tablets we already have, but they're not cell devices, so there's no cell premium charge.
Do they
on
run the
these
same
devices. These are all free Wi-Fi.
Same apps?
Do they run the same?
Different apps, related apps, but the apps choices in the iPod ecosystem are much larger than we have in the Android system. So as you saw some of them demonstrated today, here they're very specific to educational purposes.
Does this mean we're phasing one out?
I'm sorry, we got two
Oh,
questions.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Douglas.
Sorry.
I didn't know you were.
I was just asking if they communicated.
With each other?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So are we phasing out tablets?
The tablets are aging out and phasing out themselves. Yeah, we've probably lost 50% of our tablets due to attrition now. So these tablets are already 4 years old that we have now, and so they're aging out.
2 years old.
2 years.
But the device itself, we purchased it at a huge savings when we purchased them. The big cost of those tablets has really been in the 3G
cell
service, the cell service.
That was
So the
10 years.
devices, we got them, right, that was part of the experiment. You know, part of the lesson learned is that.
We don't have to do that again.
We should do that. And we purchased them before we had Wi-Fi in the district. Now we have Wi-Fi and we have no connection problems like we did the first year that we did that.
You don't have to convert me, John. I think I was the one that was saying that 2 years ago when we were doing this. But I just want clarification. We're voting on something and we don't seem, at least for me, I don't seem to have a lot of details. So one's out, one's in, we're getting our aid on it.
Yep.
So are we getting 75% aid to pay for the tablets themselves too, or just the instruction?
The hardware itself.
So this is part of I'm hoping what I say is correct. This is part of a broader technology plan that someone has in their office somewhere.
It is.
And it appears to me that the board doesn't have it.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong about that. No?
I don't think so. Doesn't want it.
You don't want it. I think the rest of us are not Luddites and would prefer to have it.
I like Peter a lot, man.
We are preparing for an increasingly digital future, both on the content side and the assessment side. So we know that greater access to technology is in our future, if there is a future. And so how we make that change, is very important. Because we've done a lot of thinking around the selection of this platform, the iPad. We think that's going to be the most versatile and give us the most return for our investment.
But a plan, would the plan be helpful to us to know that this is part of a bigger plan?
If I could speak about the plan.
Yeah.
We have, Michael's been focusing and been presenting on the infrastructure, virtual servers. You recall all those things as part of, you would say, that is the plan, is to fix those things up. And this has been part of our conversation. What happened here is actually, it's pressure that this has to be approved by tomorrow. I don't know what, I'll take some blame for this. I did not realize that all these COSA things had to be approved now for future purchasers, future agreements. So this has been part of our thinking. This one just came up as, oh, well, if we don't approve it tonight, we can't get in on it. So
this is a one-time good deal where you can never get this deal again?
well, I apologize.
It's
just- it's
what
been part of
what
our
it triggers
thinking.
this is a delay.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, no. I mean, if you guys say no, it triggers a significant delay such that we would not be looking at implementing for September.
I got a real hard time, I gotta be honest with you, with the discussion we've had tonight, with what Kimberly presented up there, with what our future looks like down the road a year or two from now, and the cuts we're gonna have to make, and the teachers who are coming in here. I at least wanna know more about it. I've not even seen this plan. I'd like to know the dollars and what it's gonna cost. All of a sudden, we gotta approve it, something that we can't get it. That doesn't sit well with me at all.
That's fair.
That's fair. So that's, you know, we should, it seems like if you gotta do it, we should at least put it to a vote. Unless you feel like we should just dump it.
I guess this is where my concern lies is that we've been doing that. Like, this is why Larry Glanton came in a couple of weeks ago and presented to you what we're showing, to illustrate for you what we're doing with the older technology that we've been using for the last 2 years. This is why Jeremy and Jen presented what we're doing with iPads in the district. This is why, you know, Mike had presented on the infrastructure, all of the technology plans that he had shared, you know, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. You know, the idea is that we're looking to move forward with technology. This program has been one that I have been very vocal about, and at the same time, I know that I'm speaking to you about how painful these cuts are. The reason that I'm standing very vigorously behind this program is because this is the direction that public education is going. And it's a direction that's saving, long-term, I see this as a net zero. When you factor in the fact that we've been discussing that the one big, huge Mondo copier here in the high school has already done over 1.2 million copies this year, that's just making copies. You know, and that these devices, just in terms of the potential savings, in terms of how we share paper, how we, give kids assignments, how we do things in our school, it's going to save us money in the long run. It's going to take us time to convert, but the idea is that we're looking at online textbooks. We've already been looking at online content. I have an entire superintendent's conference day planned for Friday where we're sitting down with my staff to begin goal setting around this. I quite frankly, I really thought that we had been talking about this off and on all year. I thought that we were sort of at the point where we're ready to move forward.
I saw Larry come in, and he's like the only teacher that I know that my son, he hasn't been uses the tablet.
Right.
I know he likes
Yeah,
it, but what about the rest of the teachers who aren't using it?
No,
Let me jump up this here.
I'm sorry, I want to respond to that specific comment. That's the thing that we've been talking about all along. My problem is that Larry Glanton and my 9th grade English teachers are the only teachers who actually have all of the students in their classes that have tablets. So the problem, again, we identified 3 issues over the last 2 years with these tablets. Pretty much in that first year, we realized connection problem. So we installed a wireless network in the district that resolved that connection problem. Now that's no longer a problem this year. The second problem was the training. This year we brought in Jason Clark, and we've been paying for him to be here as an instructional in technology integration specialist for 2 days a week to help my staff learn how to use, and all the district staff learn how to use technology more effectively. And the third problem at the high school has really been the fact that only a quarter of the kids have it. And when you look at most of the classes in my building, they're multi-grade level. So my earth science teacher, for example, is somebody who's very tech savvy, does a ton of work with technology, but he can't use the tablets that much because only about 70% of the kids in his class have one.
So can we afford to buy every student a tablet, train everybody, and buy all the tablets right now?
Yeah, that's what we've been working on that budget all year.
Not right now.
So that's going to provide every
the idea is
student
that but what we're doing is we're leasing them, so that spreads the cost out. We're buying brand new technology that's come out within the last few months for the iPad minis. The Galaxy tablets were already 2 years old when we bought them, so we got a huge cost savings on them, but that's why the technology is becoming outdated very rapidly. My teachers, as you said, Larry is using it extensively. Some of the teachers use them a little bit here and there, but what we're really working on is a program that will have every kid have one, so that now every teacher in my building can and will use them on a regular basis.
Douglas.
I guess, it sounds like a wonderful idea. However, I know when you're dealing with board superintendent relationships, there's this statement that is commonly accepted by everyone, and that is, no surprises. Well, believe me, maybe you didn't think this was a surprise, but it is. The board should have been apprised of this earlier. You have not been terribly transparent about the purpose of having these various people in here demonstrating tablets, iPads, etc. I for one, I don't know, maybe I missed something, but I had no idea this was in the works. This is a complete, I think it's a great idea, but mentally I'm just, whoa. I wasn't ready for it.
I think you can, we used to be meeting Mondays, and my administrative team will agree with this. We've been meeting on Mondays, focusing on technology. We met several Mondays in a row. Well, that's morphed totally away from that to all about Mondays is budget now. And so really our board meetings, the most focus that we put in is to how to make reductions to a budget. And I will take full responsibility. I did not realize that this conversation that we had laid out for this spring all of a sudden said, oh, no, you have to decide if you're going to pay that bill right now. And that's really the surprise to me, and I didn't realize that until 2 weeks ago. I said to Michael, I said, why is this such a rush? I mean, we haven't had time to lay this out before the board, but this is the way COSERs and BOCES
Yes.
work.
We're-
They want to know
I
they want to
understand
know
that.
right now so they can plan their budgets.
Right.
So, we will probably be compelled to get it done one way or another. We can take our time to lay it out. This is just this moment in time, sadly, I guess, because Michael has to know by tomorrow.
The deadline is tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
I
which is
understand that.
March 12th.
But in the future, I would really ask that
For sure.
the board be, I mean, if you're gonna be having conversations every Monday on technology, perhaps we should know something about that.
Well, and for a while, we were having Michael make pretty
Yeah.
regular
Yes, he was making
presentations.
reports.
And, but we really, it's
But
just
I had no
morphed
idea they
into
were
this,
headed this way. Yeah.
Well, can we keep this in perspective? We're talking about $3,000.
Yeah.
We're talking about $3,000. I mean, I understand the principle that everybody feels this, but I've bugged since back with Dave Keogh Day, where's the plan about this thing? And I've sort of noticed that there have been a lot of presentations about it. You gave a big one there for a while. I mean, and maybe it feels like, this is a surprise, but if anybody on this board thinks they're surprised we're investing in technology and laying off teachers at the same time, you may have been asleep for a while, but the reality is that's what we're going to be doing for the next 5 to 10 years. We are going to lay off teachers and we're going to invest in technology. I don't see how else we're going to be able to keep our students competitive.
I guess my concern is that we had an investment in technology that was a complete failure.
Yeah, that's why it was a pilot.
And I don't see the plan in front of me in any kind of detail that shows me why it's not going to be a failure the second time. That's all I'm saying.
That's a valid
I don't know.
point.
Do you have the money? Is it really 3,000? I want to see something that says we can do this. This is what it's going to really cost. Like, what was the attrition on the tablets that we had? That we lost all the tablets?
That thing was a train wreck.
But, I mean, we
from
lost
the
a
get-go.
bunch. If we destroyed them, I mean, are we gonna? What's our plan on replacing these things?
I'm pretty sure that thing was a train wreck from the get-go.
There's
We
so
were
many
ill-advised.
broken mouths, they won't last next year.
Glenn, your point, we could have used you a few years ago because I think we were romanced the very first time those tablets showed up.
I'm feeling romanced right now.
No, I'm not saying romance at all. But I think you didn't think that when Sandy at the time came with that proposal, that when he costed it out, that it wasn't going to cost the district so much, we had to invest in. They were giving presentations at NISBA conference for this. I think you're exactly right. Maybe we can be a little bit gun shy about this because of the train wreck, but we did pilot an effort that no one else was doing. So we had to make the mistakes for maybe other people to not make them.
So what's the plan with this $100,000? I'd feel a little better if I at least had a snapshot of what that is.
Did speak to that. So that will procure about 75 iPads and the hardware to configure the iPads.
For 75 iPads a year for the next 5 years?
75 total iPads will be purchased on a 5-year lease, if
So-
this is approved.
So that really doesn't resolve the issue that John is talking about, because his students, all of his students still won't have those.
That's right. These iPads are for teachers.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then there's going to be maybe the white elephant, maybe not the white elephant that we're going to be purchasing next year as the second part or third part of
If
this?
we move forward with one-to-one technology for students, there'd be another lease to consider this summer.
And what is that?
This
Do we
summer.
have numbers on that? What it would cost to put one in the hands of every student?
It depends on what we finalize. If we go with the iPad mini, I think I've got the number, but I can't pull it off the top of my head. I have to look at my notes.
Don't pull it up top of your head. If you don't know it, give it to us. But
What happens if we don't take action on this tonight?
Yeah,
There's,
Michael,
this
Cost
is,
us more money.
Is this
So
a
that's
year from now?
$170,000 to get the iPad minis for the high school students. A lease of $170,000.
for a 5-year period.
For
Over 5 years.
4-year lease, we go
4
pay for
years.
that.
How many?
That'd be about 400.
And the price was what, Mike?
$170K.
170K, 171.2.
And it's 70% aid.
Yeah.
We're paying 3 cents, 30 cents on the dollar. I don't know. I mean, to me, this seems like a completely, I'm going to just say my piece. I think this is completely ridiculous. We're even discussing this. We are talking about rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. And we're either gonna, I personally can't stomach presiding over the demise of this place. And I'm with you 100%. Just getting technologies in people's hands that maybe aren't ready for it or don't want to use it or still want to use slide projectors and overheads. I mean, I get that it's going to fail in some places, but I'm not willing to deny the school district a 30% failure rate for the 70% success rate we're likely to have with the addition of technology.
Frank, I'm not saying that I don't want it.
Right.
I am objecting to the process. I'm not objecting, obviously, to the technology.
As we all sit here with one.
I think what you're feeling is the frustration that the board didn't
I'm sorry.
get the fact that all these little dots that were being presented were then going to be drawn into some big comprehensive picture. And speaking solely for myself, unless you say these 15 dots are now going to be all connected and it's going to be this, I'm going to look at each dot individually and not necessarily put those together. Just me personally. So I think we're feeling some frustration. I think the fact that we're all supportive of, I guess, echo what Frank said. This is the direction we're going.
That's a fair point.
So
every dollar that's spent, I feel it's irresponsible if we don't have a clear understanding of it. I don't have absolutely zero understanding of what is really about being spent.
I assure you that I will sit down, Mike, and I will make sure that we have a very thorough presentation for you in the very near future to illustrate.
I'll bring coffee.
We prefer short.
You prefer short?
You can't get it both ways.
I'll bring coffee. I'll bring coffee.
Okay. My point is I really do, honestly, I sincerely appreciate the feedback. And the one thing that I will say is we definitely have learned a lot. And I know that it feels like in many ways that this program that we've done the last years has been a failure. But what I would say is we have learned a ton about the technology, about how we're going to implement it, what will be the most effective way to do this, and what's the best way to train my teachers to make sure that it's being used across the board. I'm really excited. I mean, this week on Friday, we've got plans for an engineer from Apple's coming in to volunteer his time to spend the day with us. He's doing an hour-long keynote address to my staff about using Apple technology in the classroom. We've got my teaching staff that have already in isolation, individuals that have gone out and received training that are bringing that back to share with the staff. We've got Jason Clark on hand for the entire day. So, I mean, we're already leaps and bounds ahead of where we were. But the idea is just like, and I know I've used this analogy, so those of you that have been around a while, I apologize, but Glenn, you're new to this one. But when we first brought smartboards into the classrooms, the first teachers that had smartboards, everybody thought, oh my God, why are we spending $10,000 a pop for a glorified electronic whiteboard where the teachers, write on it with electronic markers and do the exact same thing that they've been doing on a whiteboard that cost us, $150. The thing is that as we learned how to use the technology, as the technology evolved, it made an incredible difference in what we're doing in our classroom. And I would argue that any teacher in my building, almost any teacher in my building that you walk into the classroom that's got a smartboard in, you will see some pretty amazing things happening in terms of instruction. And I assure you, with the greatest sincerity, that my staff will be using this technology absolutely 100%. Next year, we will be using it a lot.
And we're not.
So,
well, we got a vote, or we're going to
Moving on.
Are we going to vote?
Yes.
We got a vote.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
I'm in favor.
So noted.
All right, let's try to get to the last one here.
There's two more, right?
No, this is F.
Cut out drivers now?
No, we get the authorization to sign a contract with Beardsley Design Associates.
So moved.
Looking for second. Discussion?
What is this about this?
Well,
Peter really wants to know.
well, I will tell you, amongst the other things, I decided either I'm going to read the whole Beardsley contract and understand what everything means, or I'm going to just make a recommendation to you to go ahead and sign whatever they present. And so I'm reading it and I'm meeting, and it just takes time to work with Carl Keeper, Steve Moulin. I'm meeting with Steve Moulin on Wednesday morning. We're gonna spend a couple hours. We've got like 2 or 3 back and forth responses. What does this mean? Who's gonna be responsible for that? How many days? What's the guarantee? It's about a 20-page contract, mostly written in architectural ease.
By their attorney.
And so this is, I think Beardsley's, we need to continue our relationship with them so that we can get the things changed in the contract that we want to get changed for this next capital project.
So this is sort of a stopgap measure to.
This just continues the relationship while we work out the details so that we're not just signing things out of trying to get it done.
Exactly why they're here.
Well, we needed to hire more of me, I think, because I didn't catch this other thing coming at all.
Any other question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
They'll be happy.
Driver's education discussion.
Well, I want to buy Ferraris. For the kids.
As long as it's
We're
more.
getting paid back on those Ferraris.
He wants to lease it.
We get transportation aid on Ferraris for drivers. No, basically, honestly, I just need some guidance from you in terms of how we need to proceed. Kimberly has budgeted us a little bit of money for driver's ed, but recognizing that the program itself is a drop in the bucket in the big picture. What I'm looking at is we have a couple of options. We could cut driver's ed completely, and just not offer it. We could offer it on the other end of the extreme. We could offer it exactly the way that we did this past year, which cost us about $8,500 all told. Or, right, is that correct, Kimberly?
No.
Oh.
We were paying a different rate than BOCES was, as I recall.
Yeah, actually, I don't have a solid number right now because I think that Michael was going to ask you to compare that to the rate that was being paid.
The hourly rate?
So,
Yeah.
I did generate a revenue stream,
Okay.
and that was around $300 a student, between $200 and $300 a student, and then we had room for scholarships. So,
Okay.
based on enrollment.
So there's 3 options basically. What I'm looking for guidance on, but I think we've already kind of eliminated one option just because of the expense. So we either don't offer it or we offer it, but we offer it for a fee that students could take it, but we would be charging families essentially a cost of $300 is what we had brainstormed.
And then we also wanted to leave room for perhaps 5 scholarships for students of need.
Can we do that? Is it legal?
Yes.
And
We
then
just have to.
that's the amount that would be budgeted.
No, I'm saying, like sports, when we ask them to contribute to the sports, it's illegal. So,
We would budget it.
can we do this legally without reading?
Yeah, we have to submit, I called the guy that is at State Ed and talked it through, and essentially all we have to do is submit a amended form. The form that we submitted last year to run the program that we ran this past summer, we would just amend that and resubmit, which is not long in terms of paperwork. But I know that driver's ed has been something that has been hotly debated, and I just wanted to make sure that we were okay, understanding that we're looking at making it that it would be for a price to families with the understanding that we would try to offer some scholarships.
I think driver's ed is extremely important. It certainly pays for itself in the long run. You know, we're in a fast-paced society where a lot of attention to your kids driving is not necessarily given. If we could continue to provide this service, and unfortunately that we're having to make cuts in every department possible just to stay afloat, the fact that this is a luxury, I'm willing to entertain parental support in that.
We should talk about this.
Well, I feel like I generated, maybe I'm giving myself too much credit, some of the controversy last year over this. And my concern was, and it remains again this year, that how we're structuring that pay. And if I read the contract that we just approved correctly, we pay more for teachers writing curriculum than we're going to pay our driver ed teacher. And that seems to me to be fundamentally wrong. But we have a contract, and theoretically, That's what we're going to abide by. So my concern last year was how we arrived at a pay structure, not with a program. I disagree with John. Philosophically, I don't think we should be a pay-for-play situation. If this is something that we feel is important, just like everything else, I think the district ought to find money to pay for it. And so I think we should be putting this in the budget at whatever it costs to run the program and to compensate our teacher at a appropriate level of financially that reflects the responsibility that person takes on as a driver ed teacher, which is unique in terms of its responsibility. So,
this is a discussion. Do you have any thoughts about this?
I think driver ed's a life skill that's important.
Yeah, the effects, there's a couple of things. The effect of us putting a fee on it means that students no longer get credit on their transcripts for it, because we can't make it an academic, they don't get academic credit when we pay, if we charge them for it, but it saves them the money on their insurance and all. There's all of the good reasons for them to still take driver's ed. Giving them the credit was just sort of a bonus, but what I can do is sit down with Kimberly. Again, the reason for having this on your
it's not a motion. It's
not a motion. I just wanted to
to
kind of get some guidance from you guys in terms of, are we thinking we'd like to continue to offer it? Are we willing to look at Kimberly and I can sit down and put together a clear proposal for the next meeting that just details what's it going to cost if we do it for a fee, what's it going to cost if we just run it, in terms of what are the implications for the bigger budget. And we'll put together the exact precise numbers so that you guys can make an informed decision and give us a yay or nay we want to do it.
But your problem seems to be with the contract.
Right. My 2 cents would be that at some point we involve the TTA in this, because the pay scale for that responsibility that we're asking for is disproportionately low, even not compared to what we're going to pay other summer school teachers, which we don't have, but if we did,
right.
But to someone who we're asking to sit in a room and write curriculum, and that doesn't seem to set.
Can I just make sure?
Sure.
I mean, I just have to make sure. I might be misunderstanding what you were looking at, but I'm.
And maybe I'm looking at it incorrectly.
So the contract that the board just approved for 12-13, the summer school payment, assuming he would be at the top, would be $27.53 or whoever it is, unless I'm seeing this wrong.
Is there a separate rate in there, Gary, that you're saying?
I'm looking on page 5 of the contract where it says summer school salary.
Right.
So I just arbitrarily picked that if we continue with the same person, that person's probably served in this capacity for 12 or 13 years. I put them back at the year 99-2000. And that is with a liberal interpretation of the wording, because at some point that person was not working for us but was working for BOCES, and depending on how you interpret this contract, then it would even move him further down the scale. But assuming we gave him credit for all of those years, as I'm reading this, it means that he would get paid $24.52 an hour. And if I read the part about summer curriculum, it reads that we're paying $27 an hour. And that to me just seems to be a travesty to say we're going to send someone out responsible for 4 people's lives in a chaotic situation, $25,000 worth of equipment, and we're going to pay them less than we're going to pay a teacher to sit and write curriculum. It doesn't seem right.
Well, we need to do an MOA with.
Correct, which is, in terms of the discussion, I think.
That's our thing. That's why Lynn and I chat.
First night of adoption, then you change.
All right, well, so the guidance from you all is that you're interested in seeing us continue to offer driver's ed, and we just need to look and see what are the cost benefit analysis in terms of pay rates and what it's going to cost in terms of whether or not we charge a fee.
Are there no other options for driver's ed in this community?
BOCES eliminated their program.
They did.
That was which is why we offered it this past
So the
year.
answer is there's no other place for young people to take driver's ed in this community.
There's other districts that offer programs, but they're, again, ours, if we have 20 spots, we put 20 kids in them every single year. And we've had waiting lists every year.
And so the board feels that, I want to make sure, because you guys disagreed about this. You said you don't care about.
Fundamentally, I think we need. Let's just go with that. I would like the price comparisons.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to parental participation or help funding, but I would like to know the whole
We'll bring it
picture
back
as
to
you
the price
present.
comparison.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because, I don't want to belabor this a little bit, but if we offer it, would kids theoretically come from other school districts that we could generate revenue? I'm thinking about the other side of this deal, that if
We
we offer.
don't have enough instructors to do that because it's full.
Yeah.
Oh, it's full, okay.
With the one teacher that we have right now, we offer 20 spots.
And they're filled.
And we don't have any openings.
Okay.
Okay, it's Peter's my bedtime. Let's get over here.
That was it, we got just the rest of
Do we have any old business? Gary, did you ask for something the last time around?
Yes, but it was covered. So
Okay.
if we could put a couple, driver ad on the parking lot agenda and that, so that we can make sure we're talking about it next time.
We have executive session tonight.
Anything in policy?
Should be approved.
No.
Board forum? Anyone? Douglas, you want to add a little bit?
I guess the only comment I have is that today's activities with the total lockdown are probably going to stand us in very good stead. I think we're probably one of the few schools who have actually undergone this exercise, and it's highly recommended by anyone in safety that we begin doing such lockdowns just as we do fire drills, so that they become just as automatic to the kids. Part of this weekend's programming was an entire day on safety, and it was excellent. And I will write up a report and get all of us the names of the people involved in presentations, because they were just amazingly knowledgeable. It was wonderful.
Yes.
Which prompts a question to Mr. Babcock. Where do we stand with having locks that are able to lock, door locks that are locked from the inside?
Last conversation we had with the district-wide safety team is teachers are actually locking their doors now, and they either prop them open, and so we did not proceed with purchase of those locks. We're doing it like manually, if you will, procedural changes versus equipment changes.
So the door's always locked, it just gets propped open.
Or they just leave it closed.
Much less expensive.
Or they just.
So they leave them closed.
And if the student needs in, they knock.
We're spending part of the day on Friday with Tom Ferretti and Terry O'Craig going over a PowerPoint presentation on, crisis intervention in a real tragedy type situation. And we're practicing our drills, and we're going to have some conversations about door locking and things like that.
Just for us who aren't intimately involved in the legal system at this point in their lives, who's Terry O'Craig?
He is a part-time Trumansburg police officer and also a police officer at the college whose kind of expertise is on school safety.
He's the primary person at the college for emergency response. For the college police.
We also have Jim Brew, who's the BOCES guy, coming to our district-wide safety meetings just to make sure we're hearing the latest.
The only thing I can add is, I think everyone got an invitation to go to the BOCES dinner on April 1st, is it?
Yes, I can't remember the date. It's the 12th or the 10th? Yeah.
If you get a chance, go on, please submit your return RSVPs.
I would like to add that we will be honoring John Porter's memory, and Lynn and her husband will be there that night as well to join us. I'm not sure whether or not Marilyn will be able to make it. But
20-something years ago, right?
so, and it promises to be a wonderful evening.
Okay, motion to adjourn to executive session for the matters relating to the appointment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of particular person's corporation.
So moved.
Okay, we'll just take a minute.
When you're ready. Boy, this is